"Pretend you're hugging me," pleaded the dirty, frightened girl, clinging to the legs of a stranger on the sidewalk. She had no idea that this man was a millionaire just out of a 250 million meeting. Moved by her plea, he decides to investigate who this mysterious child is. What he uncovers next involves crime, power, and a missing heiress. On a crisp November morning in Manhattan, Robert Mitchell closed the folder containing the final acquisition papers. The conference room at Mitchell Investments fell silent as the partners exchanged handshakes. Robert had just sealed a $250 million deal, the largest of his career, yet the victory felt hollow. "Congratulations, Rob," said James, his COO, clapping him on the shoulder. "We should celebrate tonight. Thanks. But I've got some work to catch up on," Robert replied, the same excuse he'd been using for months. At 39, Robert Mitchell had everything money could buy: a penthouse on Fifth Avenue, a summer home in the Hamptons, and an investment firm that had tripled its portfolio in 5 years. What his balance sheet couldn't show was the emptiness that greeted him each evening. No wife, no children, no one waiting for his return, just the immaculate silence of success. The autumn wind cut through his cashmere coat as he walked toward his waiting town car. New York City continued its relentless pace around him. Business people clutching coffee cups, tourists with upturned faces, and, unexpectedly, a small blonde girl darting through the crowd, pursued by 2 uniformed officers. Robert barely registered the commotion until the child collided with his legs, clinging to them desperately. She looked up with wide blue eyes, her oversized coat hanging from thin shoulders. Her face was smudged, her hair tangled. "Please," she whispered, trembling against him. "Pretend you're hugging me. Pretend you're my dad." Without thinking, Robert knelt down, meeting her gaze. Something in those frightened eyes stirred memories of his own childhood, before the wealth, before Mitchell Investments, when he was just a scared kid shuttled between foster homes after his parents' accident. "Are you okay?" he asked gently. The officers caught up, slightly breathless. "Sir, sorry about this. She's a runner from East Side Children's Home, 3rd time this month." The girl's fingers dug into Robert's coat. He noticed her knuckles were raw from the cold. "What's your name?" he asked her. "Lily," she whispered, barely audible. Robert stood, keeping a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Officers, what happens now?" "We take her back to the home," the taller officer explained. "They'll handle it from there." Robert felt Lily's small body tense. "Is there—" He hesitated, surprised by his own impulse. "Is there any way I could accompany you? I'd like to understand the situation." The officers exchanged glances. "Are you a relative, sir?" "No, but I'm concerned." Robert surprised himself with the firmness in his voice. "If there's a legal way I can help." 20 minutes later, Robert sat in the passenger seat of the patrol car, with Lily silent in the back. He watched her in the reflection of the window, small, vigilant, a worn backpack clutched to her chest. He had cancelled his afternoon meetings with a brief text to his assistant. The East Side Children's Home occupied a weathered brick building in a neighborhood that had seen better days. Inside, institutional green walls and fluorescent lighting created an atmosphere of resigned functionality. "Mr. Mitchell, I'm Patricia Wilson." "The director," said a gray-haired woman, extending her hand. "This is quite unusual, but the officers explained your interest. They mentioned you're inquiring about temporary guardianship options." "I'm exploring possibilities," Robert replied, surprised by his own words. He had built his fortune on calculated risks, yet here he was, acting on pure instinct. Patricia's office was small but organized, with children's artwork pinned to a bulletin board. "Lily's case is complicated," she began, gesturing for him to sit. "She's been with us for 3 years, since she was 5. During that time, she's attempted to run away 15 times. Robert glanced through the window, where Lily sat in an adjoining room, a social worker speaking gently to her. "What's her background?" he asked. Patricia sighed. "She was found at a service station off I-95. A trucker called it in. She had a suitcase of expensive clothes, but no identification. All she would say was that her mother had asked her to wait for her father." Robert leaned forward. "No family came forward." "None. We ran her information through all the databases. No missing child reports matched her description." Patricia adjusted her glasses. "Mr. Mitchell, may I ask why you're interested in Lily specifically?" We have many children in need of foster homes. Robert considered the question. Honestly? I'm not entirely sure. Something about her situation resonates with me. He paused. I was in foster care myself as a teenager. Patricia nodded, understanding softening her professional demeanor. Well, if you're serious about temporary guardianship, I can have our social worker explain the process. But I should warn you, Lily has been placed with 6 foster families. None worked out. A knock at the door interrupted them. Sarah Jenkins, Lily's social worker, entered with a folder. Mr. Mitchell, I'm Sarah. I understand you're interested in learning about fostering Lily. Yes, I am. Sarah sat down, her expression compassionate but cautious. I should explain Lily's placement history. She's intelligent, creative, but she has attachment difficulties. Whenever she begins to connect with a family, she sabotages the relationship. Sabotages? Robert asked. She becomes silent for days, takes small objects, tells elaborate lies. It's as if she's testing them, or ensuring she controls when the abandonment happens. Sarah opened the folder, revealing a child's drawing. A happy family scene with a small figure watching from the corner. This is a recurring theme in her art. She draws families but places herself outside, observing. Robert studied the drawing. What about her talents, interests? Sarah's face brightened slightly. She has an extraordinary artistic ability for her age. She sings a French lullaby with perfect pronunciation, though she speaks no other French. She remembers details from what seems to be an affluent early childhood, specific perfumes, foods, gestures. It's as if she had another life before she was found. May I speak with her? Robert asked. In the adjacent room, Lily sat rigidly in an oversized chair, her backpack still clutched to her chest. Robert took a seat across from her, careful to give her space. Hello. Lily, I'm Robert. She watched him warily, assessing. The social worker tells me you're an artist. Lily shrugged slightly. I used to draw when I was your age, Robert continued. It helped when things were difficult. Are you taking me to another family? She asked suddenly, her voice small but direct. Would you like that? She looked down. They always send me back. Why do you think that happens? Lily's fingers tightened around her backpack straps. Because I'm not what they want. Something in her resigned certainty struck Robert deeply. Lily, what if I told you I'm interested in being your temporary guardian? Not to replace anyone, just to give you a safe place while we figure things out. She looked up, her expression guarded. Why would you want me? It was the question Robert hadn't fully answered for himself. Why was he, a man who calculated every business decision to the decimal point, suddenly contemplating guardianship of a child he'd met hours ago? Because sometimes, he said carefully, people find each other when they both need someone. Lily studied him with an intensity that belied her age. Do you have a big house? Yes, though it's probably too big. It gets quiet. Do you get lonely? She asked. The directness of her question caught him off guard. Sometimes, yes. She nodded, as if confirming something to herself. I know about quiet. And lonely. Robert felt an unexpected connection forming. Two solitary souls recognizing something in each other. If I stayed with you, she continued cautiously, would there be rules? Yes, Robert answered honestly, but reasonable ones. And we'd discuss them together. Lily considered this. Would I have to go to school? Yes, education is important. I like school, she admitted, just not coming home afterward. Robert smiled slightly. Well, that's something we could work on. Sarah returned, watching their interaction with professional interest. Lily, why don't you go with Ms. Wilson to get a snack, while I talk with Mr. Mitchell about the next steps? After Lily left, Sarah outlined the process. Background checks, home evaluation, parenting classes, and court appearances. The emergency temporary guardianship could be approved within weeks, given your resources and Lily's situation. Then there's a 6-month probationary period before considering permanent arrangements. Robert nodded, taking mental notes. I want to do this properly. Whatever it takes. Mr. Mitchell, Sarah said carefully, I appreciate your enthusiasm, but this isn't like acquiring a company. Lily has experienced significant trauma and loss. She may test you in ways you can't imagine. I understand. Do you? Sarah pressed. Because what she doesn't need is another person who gives up when things get difficult. Robert met her gaze steadily. Ms. Jenkins, I built my company from nothing after aging out of foster care at 18. I understand persistence, and I understand what it means to feel like no one wants you. Sarah studied him for a long moment, then nodded. I'll initiate the paperwork. In the meantime, you can visit Lily here as part of the transition process. As Robert prepared to leave, he paused at the observation window. Lily sat at a table carefully drawing. Even from a distance, he could see the familiar scene taking shape: a house, a family, and in the corner, a small girl watching from the outside. Something shifted in Robert's chest, a certainty he hadn't felt since founding his company 15 years before. Whatever obstacles lay ahead, whatever bureaucracy he would navigate, he knew with absolute clarity that he wanted to give this child something he'd never had, the chance to move from the corner of the picture into the center. As if sensing his gaze, Lily looked up. For the briefest moment, the wariness in her eyes gave way to something like hope. Robert Mitchell, master of mergers and acquisitions, had just made the most impulsive decision of his life. And somehow it felt like the only right one. Robert Mitchell's penthouse underwent a transformation over the following weeks. The formerly minimalist space, designed by New York's most exclusive interior decorator, now featured a bedroom with sky-blue walls, bookshelves filled with children's classics, and an art corner with an easel, canvases, and professional-grade supplies. "Are you sure about this, Mr. Mitchell?" asked Eleanor Hayes, his housekeeper of 7 years, as she helped arrange stuffed animals on the window seat. "It's quite a change from your usual routine." "I'm sure, Eleanor," Robert replied, adjusting a lamp shaped like a hot air balloon. "And I'm going to need your help. I don't know much about caring for a child." Eleanor, a grandmother of 4, smiled knowingly. "Children need consistency, Mr. Mitchell, structure, boundaries, and most of all, patience." The process moved faster than anticipated, expedited by Robert's resources and reputation. Background checks, home inspections, and preliminary court appearances blurred together in a whirlwind of activity. He attended parenting classes 3 evenings a week, sitting among couples and single parents who eyed him curiously, the lone CEO in a sea of middle-class families. Robert visited Lily at Eastside Children's Home every day, their conversations gradually extending beyond monosyllabic exchanges. He learned she loved strawberry ice cream but hated chocolate, that she could read at a 6th grade level despite being only 8, and that nighttime was when her fears grew strongest. "Will I have my own bathroom?" she asked during one visit, sketching absently as they talked. "Yes, it connects directly to your bedroom," Robert replied. "And can I lock the door?" He hesitated. "For privacy, yes, but we should have some safety rules about that." Lily nodded, seemingly satisfied. "At the Brennans, I wasn't allowed to lock anything. Mrs. Brennan checked my backpack every day." "Did she find something there?" "No," Lily said, her pencil moving in swift, precise strokes. But she thought she would. On a crisp December morning, Sarah Jenkins called with news. The emergency temporary guardianship had been approved. Lily could come home with him the following day. "Remember, Mr. Mitchell, this is a 6-month arrangement initially," she cautioned. "The court will evaluate progress before considering permanent adoption." "I understand. We'll take it one day at a time." That night, Robert stood in Lily's prepared room, suddenly doubting himself. What did he know about raising a child? His own childhood had been fragmented after his parents' accident, passed between relatives who couldn't afford another mouth to feed, then into the foster system. He'd built his life around independence, control, predictability. So a child would upend everything. Eleanor found him there, staring at the freshly made bed. "Second thoughts, Mr. Mitchell?" "Wondering if I've lost my mind, more like it," he admitted. Eleanor straightened a picture frame on the dresser. "My grandmother used to say that the most important things in life rarely come from careful planning. They come from the moments when we follow our hearts despite our better judgment." Robert smiled slightly. "That's terrible business advice, Eleanor." "Good thing this isn't business, then." She patted his arm. "Get some sleep. Tomorrow will be a big day for both of you." The next morning, Robert arrived at Eastside Children's Home to find Lily waiting in the lobby, her small suitcase and backpack beside her. She wore a navy blue dress with white tights, her blonde hair neatly braided, clearly the staff's attempt to mark the occasion. "Ready to go?" he asked, trying to sound casual despite his nerves. Lily nodded, her expression guarded. She had experienced too many fresh starts to trust this one. Sarah Jenkins appeared with final paperwork and a folder of information. Lily's medical records, school transcripts, and psychological evaluations are all here. She'll need to continue weekly therapy sessions. I've included several recommended child psychologists in your area. The drive to the penthouse was quiet. Lily watched the city streets with practiced detachment, maintaining a careful distance between them on the car's leather seat. "We're almost there," Robert said as they approached his building. "It's on the top floor. You can see Central Park from your bedroom window." Lily's eyes widened slightly at the imposing limestone facade and uniformed doorman, but she quickly masked her reaction. "Good morning, Mr. Mitchell," the doorman greeted, then smiled at Lily. "And you must be Miss Lily. Welcome to your new home." She didn't respond, shrinking slightly behind Robert. In the private elevator, Lily stood perfectly still, clutching her backpack straps. Robert realized she was holding her breath. "It's okay to be nervous," he said gently. "I am too." She exhaled slowly but said nothing. The elevator opened directly into the penthouse foyer. Eleanor waited there, her warm smile offering reassurance. "Lily, this is Eleanor Hayes, my housekeeper. She's helped me get everything ready for you." "Hello, dear," Eleanor said. "Would you like to see your room first, or would you prefer a snack?" "I've made chocolate chip cookies." Lily glanced between them, calculating. "My room, please." Robert led her down the hallway, past modern art installations and into the newly transformed space. Lily stopped in the doorway, her eyes scanning every detail. "You can arrange things however you like," Robert said. "We can change anything that doesn't suit you." Lily stepped cautiously into the room, touching the soft comforter, examining the art supplies, running her fingers along the book's spines. She moved to the window, gazing out at the expanse of Central Park below. "This is all for me?" she finally asked, her voice small. "All for you." She turned toward the bathroom door, pushing it open to reveal the child-sized fixtures and fluffy towels monogrammed with an L. "You can take as long as you need to settle in," Robert said. "Eleanor will have lunch ready whenever you're hungry." Lily nodded, still surveying her surroundings with cautious assessment. "I'll let you unpack," Robert added, sensing her need for space. "I'll be in the living room if you need anything." He left her door slightly ajar and retreated, finding Eleanor in the kitchen. "She's overwhelmed," Eleanor said quietly, arranging cookies on a plate. "Give her time." The afternoon passed slowly. Lily emerged only briefly for lunch, answering questions politely but minimally. She requested to eat dinner in her room, which Robert allowed, understanding her need to establish safety in her new environment. At 9 o'clock, he knocked gently on her door. "Lily, it's bedtime soon." He found her sitting cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by drawings, dozens of them, all variations of the same theme. Houses with families inside, and a small figure watching from afar. "These are very good," he said, kneeling beside her. "You have real talent." Lily gathered the drawings quickly. "They're just pictures. Would you like to put some up on your walls? Make the space more yours?" She shook her head. "Not yet." Robert helped her prepare for bed, navigating the awkward newness of their routine. He stood uncertainly in the doorway as she climbed under the covers. "Would you like me to read to you?" he asked. "No, thank you," she replied formally. "All right." "Sleep well, Lily. If you need anything during the night, my room is just down the hall on the right." He turned to leave when her voice stopped him. "Mr. Mitchell." "Yes? Is it okay if I leave my bathroom light on?" "Of course, and Lily." "You can call me Robert if you'd like." She nodded but said nothing more. Later that night, Robert woke to a strange sound. He lay still, listening. There it was again, a soft, melodic singing. He followed the sound to Lily's room. The bathroom light cast a gentle glow across the bedroom. Lily sat by the window, singing quietly in perfect French. Robert didn't understand the words, but the lullaby's gentle cadence was unmistakable. He stood silently, not wanting to interrupt what seemed like a private ritual. As the song ended, Lily whispered something inaudible, looking out at the city lights. Robert retreated to his room, struck by the realization that this child carried mysteries he might never fully understand. The following days established a tentative routine. Lily attended her new private school, where the headmistress had been briefed on her special circumstances. Eleanor prepared breakfast each morning, and greeted Lily after school with snacks and gentle conversation. Robert rearranged his work schedule to be home by 6 each evening for dinner. On the 5th night, as they ate Eleanor's pot roast in the formal dining room, Lily spoke unprompted for the first time. "My mother used to make something like this," she said, pushing a carrot around her plate, but with different spices. Robert set down his fork. "Do you remember much about your mother?" Lily's expression became distant. "She had hair like mine. She smelled like jasmine. And she wore a ring with a blue stone." "What about your father?" Robert asked carefully. "He traveled a lot. He called me his little princess." Her voice flattened. "But he didn't come back for me." "I'm sorry, Lily." She shrugged with practiced indifference. "It's okay. I'm used to it." That night Robert couldn't sleep. He made a call to Michael Donovan, a former FBI agent who now ran a private investigation firm. Robert had used his services for corporate background checks in the past. "I need information on a child," Robert explained. "Abandoned 3 years ago at a service station off I-95, approximately 5 years old at the time. No identification, but signs of an affluent background, including fluency in French lullabies." "That's not much to go on, Rob," Michael replied. "It's all I have for now. But there's something about her story that doesn't add up. No one abandons a child that way without a reason. I'll see what I can find. It'll take time." "I understand." "And Michael? Discretion is essential. This is personal." After hanging up, Robert went to check on Lily. To his surprise, she wasn't in her bed. Panic gripped him until he spotted her tiny figure curled up on the window seat, sound asleep, her sketchbook open beside her. He carefully lifted the book. The drawing showed a new scene, his penthouse with lights glowing warmly, and inside a tall figure reading a newspaper, while another figure moved about the kitchen. Robert felt a strange tightness in his chest. For the first time in one of her drawings, the little girl wasn't watching from outside. She was sitting at a table, drawing. Gently he covered Lily with a blanket, leaving her to sleep by the window that overlooked the city. As he placed her sketchbook on the nightstand, he noticed something scribbled in the corner of her drawing. Maybe this time. Robert returned to his own room, more resolved than ever to make those simple, hopeful words come true. Whatever mysteries surrounded this child, whatever obstacles lay ahead, he would not be another person who failed her. What he couldn't know was how soon those mysteries would begin to unravel, or how dangerous the truth might prove to be. 3 weeks into their new arrangement, Robert began to notice subtle changes in Lily. Her silences grew less frequent, her formal politeness occasionally giving way to genuine curiosity. Small precious moments of normalcy emerged. A smile when Eleanor served her favorite strawberry pancakes, excitement over a school art project, even a spontaneous question about Robert's day at work. But nighttime remained difficult. Twice Robert had awakened to find Lily wandering the penthouse in the dark, her eyes distant, as if searching for something, or someone. When gently guided back to bed, she had no memory of these episodes the next morning. On a snowy January afternoon, Robert sat in Michael Donovan's office in a nondescript building in Midtown. The private investigator closed the blinds before speaking. "I've been looking into your girl's background," Michael said, sliding a thin folder across his desk. "Not much to go on initially, but I've found some threads worth pulling." Robert opened the folder to find photographs of clothing labels. "What am I looking at?" "The items Lily was wearing when she was found. The police report didn't detail it, but I tracked down the officer who responded. The child had a small suitcase containing designer children's clothing, Bonpoint, Petit Bateau, Jacquardi, high-end European brands." "Confirming an affluent background," Robert noted. "Exactly. And there's more." Michael tapped another document. "The lullaby you mentioned? It's called À la Clairefontaine, a traditional French song. Not something typically known to American children, unless they've spent time in France or have French-speaking relatives." Robert thought of Lily's perfect pronunciation. So we're looking at a family with French connections, wealth, and a reason to abandon their child at a remote service station. Michael leaned back in his chair. "I've cross-referenced missing persons reports from that time frame. Nothing matches. If this child went missing, no one reported it, at least not through official channels. That makes no sense. Unless—" Michael hesitated. "Unless someone didn't want her found." Robert felt a chill that had nothing to do with the January weather. "What are you suggesting?" "I've seen cases where children become inconvenient to powerful people. Custody battles, inheritance disputes, scandals that need covering up." Michael's expression darkened. "Sometimes the simplest explanation is that someone wanted her to disappear." Robert thought of Lily's drawings, her nighttime wanderings, the fragments of memories she occasionally shared. She remembers things, details about her past life. There must be something there we can trace. I need more to go on. Specific memories, names, places, anything concrete. I'll try to get her to open up more. But I won't push her. She's just starting to trust me. Michael nodded. "There's one more avenue I'm pursuing. If we're dealing with the kind of wealth suggested by her background, there might be inheritance implications. I'm looking into prominent families with children who officially don't exist anymore, whether through alleged accidents, estrangements, or other circumstances." As Robert drove home through the falling snow, his mind raced with possibilities. What if Lily wasn't simply abandoned? What if someone had deliberately placed her in the system, where she would become just another forgotten child? He found Lily at the dining table with Eleanor, working on homework. Seeing them together, Eleanor patiently explaining a math problem, Lily's blonde head bent in concentration, created an illusion of normalcy that Robert was increasingly determined to protect. That evening, after Eleanor had gone home and Lily was preparing for bed, Robert sat beside her on the edge of the mattress. "Lily, I was wondering if you could tell me more about your life before you came to Eastside Children's Home." Her small fingers picked at a loose thread on her blanket. "Why?" "I'd like to understand you better. And sometimes talking about memories helps us make sense of them." Lily was quiet for so long that Robert thought she wouldn't answer. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, "We lived in a house with a garden. I had a room with stars on the ceiling that glowed in the dark. My mother painted them herself." "That sounds beautiful." "She spoke French to me sometimes, especially at bedtime." Lily's eyes grew distant. "My father was away a lot. Business trips, my mother said. When he came home, he brought me presents from different countries. Do you remember what kind of work your father did?" Lily shook her head. "There were lots of meetings. People came to our house sometimes. My mother didn't like them. She would send me to play in my room when they arrived." "And your mother? What was she like?" A small smile touched Lily's lips. "She was pretty. She played the piano. And she always smelled nice, like flowers." "Jasmine," Robert supplied. "Yes." Lily looked up, surprised. "How did you know?" "You mentioned it before," he said gently. "You have a good memory." "That's what my mother said too. She called me her little elephant because I never forgot anything." Lily's expression clouded. "The last night she was scared. She packed my suitcase very quickly. She kept looking out the windows." Robert tried to keep his voice casual despite his quickening pulse. "The last night before what, Lily?" "Before we left. We drove for a long time. She kept saying we had to hurry, that we would meet Daddy later." Lily's voice grew softer. "We stopped at a big gas station. She bought me pistachio ice cream and told me to wait on the bench while she made a phone call. She said she'd be right back. But she didn't come back," Robert concluded gently. Lily's eyes filled with tears. "I waited and waited. A police officer found me the next morning. I told him my mommy was coming back, but he didn't believe me." Robert carefully placed his arm around her small shoulders. To his surprise, she leaned into him slightly. "I think she wanted to come back for you. Lily, I'm sure she did." After Lily finally fell asleep, Robert called Michael. "I need you to check missing person reports, accident records, anything involving a woman traveling with a young child approximately 3 years ago. Probably in the northeast, possibly heading south on I-95. That's still pretty vague, Rob. She may have been fleeing from someone, possibly her husband. The child mentioned her mother was frightened, packing in a hurry. And she spoke French. I'll see what I can find. But Rob," Michael paused, "if we're dealing with what I think we might be, a powerful family with secrets, this could get complicated. Are you sure you want to pull this thread?" "I'm sure," Robert replied without hesitation. "Lily deserves to know the truth about her past." Over the next 2 weeks, Robert observed Lily carefully, creating opportunities for her to share more memories without pressing her. One evening, as they sat together in the living room, Robert reviewing contracts while Lily drew at the coffee table, She mentioned something new. My father had an office with a big window. You could see water from it. Robert set aside his papers. Like a lake? Or the ocean? The ocean, I think. And there were boats. Was this in the same place as your house with the garden? Lily shook her head. No, we had to take a car to go... There, it was a tall building with his name on it. Robert made a mental note to share this detail with Michael. Coastal City, a prominent building named after its owner. This was concrete information they could use. The next day, Robert received a text from Michael requesting an urgent meeting. They arranged to meet at a quiet cafe in Brooklyn, away from Manhattan's financial district where Robert might be recognized. Michael arrived looking troubled, a thick folder under his arm. What is it? Robert asked after they were seated in a corner booth. I've been cross-referencing wealthy families with French connections, coastal properties and corporate interests. Michael opened the folder, revealing printouts of news articles and photographs. I think I know who Lily might be. He slid a magazine clipping across the table. It showed a striking blonde woman in elegant evening wear, a blue sapphire ring prominent on her hand. Beside her stood a distinguished-looking man with silver temples, his arm possessively around her waist. Caroline and William Harrison, Michael explained. He's the controlling shareholder of Harrison Global Industries, shipping, real estate, technology investments across 3 continents. Headquarters in Boston with his name on the building, overlooking the harbor. They were known for their philanthropic work, prominent in Boston society. Robert studied the photograph. 3 years ago, Caroline Harrison and their 5-year-old daughter, Elizabeth, were reportedly lost at sea during a private yacht excursion off the coast of Maine. William Harrison was in London on business at the time. Robert felt his pulse quicken. Bodies never recovered. The Coast Guard found the yacht drifting. No signs of struggle. The official conclusion was that mother and daughter had fallen overboard in rough seas. But you don't believe that? Michael lowered his voice. Financial records show Caroline Harrison withdrew significant sums from her personal accounts in the weeks before the incident. She also contacted a divorce attorney specializing in high-net-worth cases. She was planning to leave him, Robert murmured. And then there's this. Michael slid another document across the table. 2 weeks before her disappearance, Caroline transferred $500,000 to a new account under the name Claire Fontaine. The lullaby, Robert whispered. Exactly. Claire Fontaine withdrew the entire amount in cash 3 days after the account was opened. Then the trail goes cold. Michael tapped the photograph of Caroline. Now look at this image of Elizabeth Harrison, taken 6 months before the incident. The photograph showed a small blonde girl with serious blue eyes, sitting formally for a portrait in an expensive-looking dress. Robert felt his heart stop. Despite the professional styling and the passage of 3 years, the resemblance to Lily was unmistakable. Jesus, he breathed. It gets more interesting, Michael continued. Last month, William Harrison announced his intention to sell controlling interest in Harrison Global to a Chinese investment consortium. The deal is valued at approximately $3 billion. What's the connection? I had my financial analyst contact look into the Harrison Family Trust. There's a succession clause stipulating that in the event a direct heir reappears after being legally presumed deceased, they automatically inherit 30% of all Harrison assets. Robert calculated quickly. $900 million, which would significantly complicate Harrison's sale. Michael's expression grew grave. A living Elizabeth Harrison wouldn't just be an emotional complication for William, she'd be a financial liability of massive proportions. You think Caroline was running from him? Taking their daughter to safety. And something happened to Caroline before she could return for Elizabeth. Michael closed the folder. I don't have proof yet, but I'm working on tracking Caroline's movements after the withdrawal. If she was using the name Claire Fontaine, there might be hotel records, car rentals, something to establish where she went after leaving the service station. Robert thought of Lily sleeping peacefully in his penthouse, unaware that she might be the missing heiress to a business empire. If we're right about this, Lily could be in danger. If Harrison is willing to sell his company, he wouldn't want complications arising now. I've been careful with my inquiries, but we should take precautions. For now, no one knows you're investigating Lily's background, and no one has connected her to Elizabeth Harrison. Let's keep it that way until we have more concrete evidence, Robert said firmly. In the meantime, I'll increase security at the building and make sure Lily is never alone. As he left the cafe, Robert felt the weight of this new knowledge pressing on him. The abandoned child in his care wasn't simply a foster system. Casualty, she was potentially the missing piece in a puzzle involving billions of dollars and a powerful man with everything to lose if she were discovered. Back at the penthouse, he found Lily sitting with Eleanor at the kitchen counter, frosting cookies. She looked up as he entered, her face lighting with a smile that now seemed rarer and more precious given what he had learned. "Robert!" "I made one for you," she said, holding up a star-shaped cookie covered in blue frosting. "Eleanor says it matches your eyes." He accepted the cookie, his throat tight with emotion. "Thank you, Lily, it's perfect." That night, as he checked on her before going to bed himself, Robert found a new drawing on her nightstand. It showed 3 figures standing together outside the penthouse: a tall man, a small girl, and a woman with flowing blonde hair and a blue ring. The woman was drawn with fainter lines, like a ghost or a memory, but she was smiling down at the child who stood firmly between the 2 adults. Robert carefully replaced the drawing, wondering if Lily's subconscious was processing truths her conscious mind couldn't yet fully grasp. Whatever the coming days would bring, he knew with absolute certainty that he would protect this child, not just from outside threats, but from the painful truths that might be lurking in her past. February arrived with record snowfall, transforming Central Park into a winter wonderland visible from Lily's bedroom window. On a Saturday morning, Robert stood in the doorway watching as she pressed her nose against the glass, breath fogging the pane. "Have you ever built a snowman?" he asked. She turned, something like longing in her expression. "Once, a long time ago. Would you like to build one today?" 20 minutes later, they were bundled in winter gear, descending in the private elevator. Lily vibrated with barely contained excitement, the most childlike behavior Robert had seen from her yet. In the park, they found a pristine expanse of snow. Robert demonstrated how to pack and roll it, creating a perfect base. Lily worked intently beside him, her small gloved hands shaping snow with surprising precision. "My mother and I made a snowman once," she said, as they worked on the middle section. She gave him her scarf. "It was blue with little flowers. Do you remember where that was?" Robert asked casually. Lily's brow furrowed. "There was a big white house, and trees with no leaves. Was it near the ocean, or in the city?" There were woods behind our house, and my mother said the ocean was close, but I couldn't see it from my window." She patted more snow onto their creation. "Sometimes I remember things, but I don't know if they're real or just dreams." Robert helped her lift the middle section onto the base. "What do you mean?" "Say it like the blue ring my mother wore. Sometimes I can see it so clearly. It sparkled when she moved her hands. But other times I wonder if I made it up." "You didn't make it up," Robert said softly. "I believe your memories are real, Lily." She looked up at him, snowflakes catching on her eyelashes. "How do you know?" "Sir, because you remember them with such detail. The way the ring sparkled, the scent of jasmine, the lullaby. These aren't things you would invent." Lily seemed to consider this as they finished the snowman, adding a carrot nose and Robert's scarf. When it was complete, she stood back to admire their work, a genuine smile spreading across her face. "He needs a name," Robert suggested. "Monsieur Neige," Lily replied without hesitation. "It means Mr. Snow in French." On their walk home, Lily slipped her small hand into his, the first time she had initiated physical contact. Robert felt something shift in his chest, a fierce protectiveness mingled with growing affection. Later that evening, as Robert worked in his home office, his phone buzzed with a text from Michael. "Need to meet. New developments. Usual place tomorrow noon." The next day, Robert arranged for Eleanor to stay with Lily while he met Michael at the Brooklyn Cafe. The investigator arrived looking tense, ordering coffee before speaking. "I've been following the money trail," Michael began. "Caroline Harrison's $500,000 was just the beginning. In the 3 months before her disappearance, she systematically liquidated personal assets worth nearly $2 million. "That sounds like someone planning an escape," Robert noted. "Exactly. And here's where it gets interesting." Michael slid a photograph across the table. This was taken at a luxury hotel in Montreal, 2 weeks before the yacht incident. The image showed Caroline Harrison entering the hotel lobby, a wide-brimmed hat partially obscuring her face, but the distinctive blue ring visible on her hand. She wasn't alone, Michael continued, producing another photo. She met with this man. Robert studied the image of a distinguished gentleman in his 60s. Who is he? Jean-Pierre Beaumont, former legal counsel to European banking families, specializes in creating new identities, offshore accounts, disappearing fortunes, all strictly legal, of course, but perfect for someone looking to vanish with significant assets. So Caroline was methodically planning to leave her husband and take their daughter. Yes, but there's more. Michael lowered his voice. William Harrison's company, Harrison Global, has been under investigation by the Securities and Exchange Commission for the past 5 years. Nothing has stuck, but there are allegations of financial improprieties, money laundering, tax evasion, connections with questionable business entities in Eastern Europe. You think Caroline discovered something incriminating? It would explain the urgency of her departure and the elaborate financial preparations. Michael sipped his coffee. Here's my theory. Caroline found evidence of illegal activity. Rather than confront her husband, she decided to take their daughter and disappear. But Harrison discovered her plan. And the yacht incident was staged, Robert concluded. It's the perfect cover. Mother and daughter lost at sea, presumed deceased. No one would look for them. Michael's expression darkened. But something went wrong. Caroline managed to get her daughter to that service station, but she never returned. What happened to her? Michael hesitated. 3 weeks after Elizabeth Harrison disappeared, the body of an unidentified woman was found in a wooded area near the Maryland-Virginia border. Cause of disappearance was listed as undetermined, possibly self-administered, due to high levels of sedatives in her system. She had no identification, and her fingerprints weren't in any database. Was it Caroline? The body was buried in an unmarked grave after authorities failed to identify her. I've requested the case files and photographs, but it will take time. Michael leaned forward. Rob, if William Harrison staged his wife's disappearance and something happened to her, he wouldn't want his daughter found either. Not just because of the inheritance clause, but because she might remember something incriminating. The implications sent a chill through Robert. Lily could be in danger if anyone discovers her true identity. Exactly. And with Harrison's resources, we have to assume he has eyes and ears everywhere. I've been careful, but we can't be too cautious. Back at the penthouse, Robert found Lily and Eleanor baking cookies. Seeing her standing on a step stool at the counter, flour smudged on her cheek as she carefully measured ingredients, the abstract threat suddenly became viscerally real. This child, who was finally beginning to trust, to smile, to reach for his hand, might be the target of powerful forces who would stop at nothing to protect their interests. Robert, Lily called, spotting him. We're making snickerdoodles. Do you want to help? I'd love to, he replied, pushing aside his dark thoughts. These moments of normalcy were precious, and he would fight to preserve them. That night Lily had a nightmare, the first since coming to live with him. Her screams woke Robert from a dead sleep. He rushed to her room to find her thrashing against the covers, her face contorted in terror. Lily, wake up, he called, gently shaking her shoulders. It's just a dream. Her eyes flew open, wild with panic. They're coming! Don't let them take me. No one is going to take you, he promised, gathering her into his arms. You're safe here. She buried her face against his shoulder, her small body shaking with sobs. My mother said to hide. She said they would look for me. Robert's blood ran cold. Was this in your dream, Lily? She shook her head against his chest. No, before the night we left our house. She said if they found me, they would take me away forever. He held her until the trembling subsided, until her breathing steadied and her tight grip on his shirt relaxed. When she finally spoke again, her voice was small but clear. Will you stay? Just until I fall asleep again. Of course. As he sat beside her bed, Lily's hand still clutching his, Robert made a silent vow. Whatever forces were arrayed against this child, whatever danger lurked in her past, he would stand between her and harm. Not just as a guardian, but as the father she deserved, one who would never abandon her, never use her as a pawn in some larger game. The next morning, Lily seemed to have no memory of her nocturnal confession. She ate breakfast and prepared for school, with her usual quiet efficiency, though Robert noticed she stayed closer to him than usual, as if drawing reassurance from his presence. As February progressed, their routines deepened. Robert adjusted his work schedule to be home when Lily returned from school. They ate dinner together every evening, and he helped with homework, discovering that while she excelled in reading and art, mathematics required patient assistance. On weekends, they explored the city, the Natural History Museum, the Children's Museum of the Arts, the Central Park Zoo. Gradually, almost imperceptibly, the formal politeness that had characterized their early interactions gave way to something more natural. Lily began to ask questions about his day, to share anecdotes from school, to express preferences and occasionally even disagreements. Each small assertion of self felt like a victory, evidence that she was beginning to feel secure enough to show her true personality. One evening, as Robert read a bedtime story, a new addition to their routine, Lily interrupted with an unexpected question. "Are you going to send me back?" The book lowered to his lap. "Back where, Lily?" "To Eastside. When I do something wrong." "No," he said firmly. "This is your home now. Even when you make mistakes, which everyone does, you'll still belong here." She studied his face with that unnerving intensity that sometimes made her seem far older than 8. "Promise?" "I promise." A week later, Robert returned from a meeting to find the penthouse strangely quiet. Usually, Eleanor greeted him at the door with an update on Lily's day. "Eleanor, Lily?" he called, a note of alarm entering his voice when there was no response. He moved swiftly through the apartment, panic rising with each empty room. When he reached Lily's bedroom, he found the door closed, unusual as they had a rule about keeping doors open when adults weren't present. He knocked softly. "Lily, are you in there?" No answer. Heart pounding, Robert opened the door to find Eleanor sitting on the edge of the bed, her arm around Lily, who was clutching something small and glittering in her palm. "What's going on?" he asked, relief giving way to concern at their serious expressions. Eleanor looked up. "Mr. Mitchell, Lily has something to tell you." The child's face was blotchy from crying, her eyes downcast. "I took something that wasn't mine," she whispered. She extended her hand, opening her fingers to reveal a silver pocket watch, an antique that had belonged to Robert's grandfather, kept in a drawer in his study. "I see," Robert said carefully, sitting down on her other side. "Can you tell me why?" Lily's shoulders hunched. "I don't know. I just wanted it." Eleanor rose discreetly. "I'll give you two some privacy." After she left, Robert gently took the watch from Lily's palm. "This belonged to my grandfather. It's special to me." "Are you mad?" she whispered, still not meeting his eyes. "I'm not mad, but I am disappointed that you took something without asking. More importantly, I'm concerned about why you did it." Lily's chin trembled. "Sometimes I take things from people." "I know," Robert said gently. "Sarah told me this happened in your foster homes, too. They always sent me back after, and there it was, the fear lurking beneath the surface. Each small transgression was a test, a way of hastening the inevitable rejection before she could become too attached." "Lily, look at me," Robert said. The blue eyes, so like those of the woman in the photograph, finally met his. "Remember what I promised? This is your home. You belong here even when you make mistakes." She studied him warily as if searching for deception. "You're really not going to send me away?" "Never." The word hung between them, weighted with promise. Slowly, hesitantly, Lily leaned against his side. Robert put his arm around her, feeling something fragile and precious building between them. Trust. Slowly taking root. That night, after Lily was asleep, Robert called Michael. "I need you to expedite whatever you're doing," he said without preamble. "I want to file for permanent adoption as soon as possible." "Rob, are you sure that's wise? If Lily is Elizabeth Harrison, then she's still a child who needs a family," Robert interrupted. "So real family, not a legacy to be protected or a pawn in some corporate game. Whatever her legal name is, whatever her past holds, she deserves a future where she's loved for herself, not for what she represents." "I understand," Michael replied. "But proceeding with adoption, while knowing her potential identity, creates complications. Legally, you'd be obligated to make reasonable efforts to locate living relatives. I'm aware, and if William Harrison is who we suspect he is, I'll fight him with everything I have. After ending the call, Robert went to check on Lily one last time. She slept peacefully, her blonde hair spread across the pillow, one hand clutching a stuffed elephant he'd bought her at the zoo. On her nightstand sat a new drawing, the penthouse with two figures clearly visible through the windows, a tall man and a small girl side by side at a table. No observer in the corner, no ghostly third figure, just the two of them together. Robert felt a surge of resolve. The legal battle ahead might be daunting, the risks real, but he had built an empire from nothing once before. For Lily, he would do it again and more. He would create a fortress around her, not of wealth or influence, but of love and unwavering commitment. What he didn't realize was how soon that commitment would be tested, or how powerful the forces arrayed against them would prove to be. March arrived with biting winds and the first stirrings of trouble. Robert sat in his attorney's office, reviewing the permanent adoption paperwork. David Levinson had represented Mitchell Investments since its inception, but today he was acting in a personal capacity. The initial hearing is scheduled for next month, David explained, adjusting his glasses. Given your resources and Lily's situation, I don't anticipate major obstacles. The 6-month temporary guardianship period will conclude in May, and barring unforeseen complications, the adoption could be finalized by early summer. Robert nodded, signing where indicated. I want this airtight, David. No technicalities, no loopholes. David hesitated, setting down his pen. Robert, is there something you're not telling me? Any reason someone might contest this adoption? Robert considered how much to reveal. David was not just his attorney, but one of his oldest friends. It's complicated. Lily's background isn't as straightforward as it appears. Meaning? Meaning I have reason to believe she comes from a powerful family who may not want her found. David's expression grew serious. Are we talking about a custody dispute? A kidnapping? Nothing that simple, Robert replied. Let's just say there are financial implications to Lily's existence that certain parties would prefer to avoid. Robert, if you have information about a child's true identity that hasn't been disclosed to the court— I'm gathering evidence, Robert interrupted. When I have something concrete, I'll address it through proper channels. For now, I need to ensure Lily's safety and well-being. David studied him for a long moment. I've known you for 15 years. You've never been reckless, even with your biggest acquisitions. But I sense you're walking a fine line here. I'm doing what's best for Lily. Make sure your definition of best aligns with the court's. David gathered the signed documents. I'll file these tomorrow. In the meantime, keep me informed of any developments that might affect the proceedings. As Robert left the office, his phone buzzed with a text from Eleanor. Someone came by the building asking about you and Lily. Said they were from social services but didn't have proper ID. Doorman turned them away. A cold weight settled in Robert's stomach. He immediately called Michael Donovan. Someone's poking around my building, he said without preamble, claiming to be from social services. That's concerning, Michael replied. Could be legitimate, could be someone fishing for information. Either way, we should increase security precautions. Already on it. Any updates on your end? I've obtained the police report on the unidentified woman found near the Maryland-Virginia border. The timing and physical description match Caroline Harrison. I'm working on getting access to the medical examiner's files to compare dental records. And William Harrison? He's pushing to finalize the sale of Harrison Global by the end of the second quarter. The deal would restructure the company's ownership, effectively nullifying the succession clause once the transaction closes. So he's on a timeline, Robert concluded. Exactly. If Elizabeth Harrison were to resurface before the sale concludes, it would trigger the inheritance provision, potentially derailing the entire transaction. How would he even know to look for her now? She's been presumed deceased for 3 years. Michael paused. That's what worries me. Someone must have flagged something in our investigation. I've been careful, but Harrison has connections throughout the financial and legal worlds. One misplaced inquiry, one too specific question. Double down on security, Robert said firmly. I want to know every unusual contact, every strange inquiry, anything that doesn't feel right. When Robert returned to the penthouse, Lily was working on a school project at the dining table. Colored construction paper, scissors, and glue sticks were scattered across the normally pristine surface. She looked up as he entered, her serious expression melting into a smile. "I'm making a diorama of the solar system," she explained, holding up a blue and green paper earth. "Eleanor helped me with the wire structure." "It looks great," Robert said, setting down his briefcase. "Jupiter needs more red in the Great Red Spot, though." Lily looked surprised. "You know about Jupiter?" "I wanted to be an astronaut when I was your age. I read everything I could find about space." "What happened? Why didn't you become one?" Robert sat beside her, picking up a scrap of yellow paper. "Life took me in a different direction. After my parents were in an accident, I moved around a lot. College became about practical choices, business, finance, things that would provide security." Lily considered this as she carefully glued a ring around Saturn. "Do you wish you'd done it differently?" "Sometimes," he admitted, "but then I wouldn't have my company, or this apartment, or you." She smiled again, a genuine, unguarded expression that transformed her serious face into something luminous. These moments were becoming more frequent, glimpses of the carefree child she might have been without the trauma of abandonment. Later that evening, after helping Lily hang her completed solar system from her bedroom ceiling, Robert received an encrypted email from Michael. The subject line read simply, "Confirmation." The attachment contained dental records from the unidentified woman found in Maryland and Caroline Harrison's dental records obtained from a Boston practice. The comparison left no doubt they were the same person. Caroline Harrison had not drowned at sea. She had been found hundreds of miles from where she had left her daughter, with no identification and a system full of sedatives. The implications were clear and chilling. If William Harrison had orchestrated his wife's disappearance to conceal her true fate, what would he do if he discovered his daughter was alive and living with Robert Mitchell? The next morning, Robert called the head of security for his building, implementing enhanced protocols. Lily was never to leave the building without either Robert or Eleanor accompanying her. The doorman was to verify the identity of all visitors, and no one claiming to be from any agency was to be admitted without prior authorization. A week later, as Robert reviewed quarterly reports in his home office, Eleanor knocked on the door. "Mr. Mitchell, there's something you should see." She handed him a sealed envelope. "This was delivered to the front desk with your name on it. No return address, no courier service identified." Robert examined the plain white envelope warily before carefully opening it. Inside was a single sheet of heavy stationery with a typewritten message. Those who involve themselves with the past often become lost in it. "When did this arrive?" he asked sharply. "About an hour ago. The doorman said a messenger dropped it off. Young man, bicycle courier, nothing suspicious." Robert placed the note in a plastic sleeve from his desk drawer. "Where's Lily?" "In her room, working on a painting. She's quite absorbed in it." "Good. Please don't mention this to her." After Eleanor left, Robert photographed the note and sent it to Michael with a brief message. "It's starting." The warning was oblique but unmistakable. Someone knew he was investigating Lily's background and wanted him to stop. The question was whether this was a shot across the bow or the prelude to more direct action. 2 days later, Robert was leaving his office building when a man in an expensive suit approached him in the parking garage. "Mr. Mitchell?" "A moment of your time." Robert tensed, hand moving toward the panic button on his key fob. "Who are you?" "Just a messenger." The man's smile didn't reach his eyes. "I represent interests that are concerned about your recent inquiries." "What interests would those be?" "Parties who prefer discretion. They've authorized me to offer a solution to your situation." The man withdrew an envelope from his jacket. "Inside you'll find the name of a private school in Switzerland. Exceptional education, complete anonymity. All expenses paid for the child currently in your care. You would, of course, be generously compensated for your cooperation, say $10 million. Robert felt cold fury rising. "You're suggesting I give up Lily in exchange for money?" The man shrugged elegantly. "I'm suggesting a mutually beneficial arrangement. The child receives the finest education Europe can offer. You receive substantial compensation for your temporary guardianship. Everyone benefits." "Get out of my sight," Robert said, his voice dangerously quiet. And tell your interests that Lily isn't for sale. At any price. The man's pleasant expression hardened. Mr. Mitchell, I don't think you appreciate the complexity of the situation. There are forces at work here beyond your understanding. I understand perfectly, Robert replied. Someone powerful is trying to erase a child's existence. Someone who's already responsible for her mother's disappearance. Tell William Harrison that if he wants a fight, he's found one. A flicker of surprise crossed the man's face before his professional mask returned. I don't know who you think I represent, but I advise you to reconsider. This offer expires in 48 hours. After that, other methods may be employed. As the man walked away, Robert called Michael. Harrison's made contact, tried to buy me off with 10 million and a Swiss boarding school for Lily. That confirms our theory, Michael replied grimly. If he's moved to direct contact, he's getting desperate. The sale must be progressing. He threatened other methods if I don't cooperate. Take it seriously, Rob. This isn't a corporate takeover where the worst outcome is financial loss. Harrison can't afford for his daughter to reappear now. Not with 3 billion at stake. That night, Robert found it impossible to sleep. He checked on Lily repeatedly, watching the rise and fall of her chest, the peaceful expression that came only in slumber. In just 3 months, this child had become the center of his world, more important than his company, his wealth, everything he had spent his adult life building. The next morning, as Lily ate breakfast before school, Robert made a decision. How would you feel about taking a little vacation? He asked casually. Lily looked up from her cereal. What about school? I think we both deserve a break. Maybe somewhere warm? Florida? We could go to Disney World. Her eyes widened. Really, when? How about this weekend? I'll make the arrangements today. Lily's excitement was palpable as she hurried to finish her breakfast. Robert texted Eleanor about the change in plans, then contacted his pilot to prepare the corporate jet. A short-term retreat seemed prudent, while he assessed the threat level and strengthened their legal position. As Lily gathered her backpack for school, the house phone rang. Eleanor answered, then handed it to Robert with a concerned expression. It's Lily's school. The headmistress wants to speak with you urgently. Robert took the phone, dread pooling in his stomach. This is Robert Mitchell. Mr. Mitchell, this is Dr. Hammond. I'm calling about a disturbing situation. We've received anonymous calls alleging neglect regarding Lily. What? That's absurd. I agree, which is why I'm calling you directly rather than following standard protocol. The allegations are vague but troubling. Claims that Lily is being held against her will, that her true identity is being concealed. Robert gripped the phone tightly. These allegations are completely false. Lily is thriving in my care, as her teachers can attest. I'm aware, which is why I found the calls suspicious, but I must inform you that they've also been made to the Department of Child Services. An investigator may contact you. After ending the call, Robert turned to find Lily watching him, her earlier excitement replaced by anxiety. Is something wrong? Do I have to leave? He knelt to her level. No, sweetheart. Nothing's wrong and you're not going anywhere. There's just been a misunderstanding that I need to fix. Like when Miss Peterson thought I cheated on my spelling test because I got all the hard words right. Robert smiled despite his concern. Exactly like that. Sometimes people make mistakes. But it's going to be fine. He called David immediately after Eleanor took Lily to school. I need you to prepare for potential interference in the adoption process. Someone's making anonymous allegations to child services. This is escalating quickly, David noted. First the mysterious visitor, now false accusations. Someone really doesn't want you to adopt this child. It's going to get worse before it gets better, Robert replied. I'm taking Lily to Florida for a few days. Keep everything moving with the adoption filing. That afternoon, Robert was reviewing security footage from his building lobby when Michael called. We have a problem, the investigator said without preamble. Your name has appeared in connection with a tax fraud investigation. What? That's ridiculous. And of course it is. It's also completely fabricated. Someone's trying to create legal complications that will delay or derail the adoption process. Robert pinched the bridge of his nose. Can you trace the source? Celestine, working on it. But it's sophisticated. Multiple layers, carefully constructed paper trail. This isn't amateur hour. After hanging up, Robert stared out at the Manhattan skyline, weighing options. Harrison was methodically applying pressure. First the warning note, then the bribe attempt. Now attacks on his reputation and suitability as a parent. Each move designed to separate him from Lily without direct confrontation. Eleanor found him still at the window an hour later. "Mr. Mitchell, you should know that the doorman reported someone taking photographs of the building entrance this morning. When approached, they claimed to be from an architectural magazine." Eleanor's normally composed expression showed genuine concern. "Someone is trying to erase you, sir, slowly without leaving fingerprints." Robert nodded grimly. "I know. What can I do to help?" "I'll to pack essential items for Lily and yourself. We're leaving for Florida tomorrow morning instead of waiting for the weekend. And you believe we'll be safer there? My property in Key West has advanced security, limited access points, and staff I trust implicitly. It's not a permanent solution, but it buys us time." That evening, as Robert helped Lily pack her favorite clothes and art supplies, she seemed to sense the urgency beneath his casual manner. "Are we running away?" she asked suddenly. Robert paused, considering how to answer. "Not running away. Just taking a break somewhere safe while I sort out some business problems." Lily folded a T-shirt with careful precision. "Is it because of me?" "The problems? So astute. Why would you think that?" "Because things started going wrong after I came to live with you." Robert sat beside her on the bed. "Lily, listen to me. The problems aren't your fault. They're happening because there are people who don't understand how important you are to me. Like my other foster families? No, this is different." He hesitated, unsure how much to explain. "Sometimes when people have a lot of money or power, they think they can control everything and everyone. But they can't, not if we stand together." Lily considered this, then reached for his hand, a gesture that had become more natural in recent weeks. "Are we going to be okay?" "Yes," he promised, squeezing her small fingers gently. "We're going to be just fine." That night, long after Lily had fallen asleep, Robert sat in his study compiling a dossier of every suspicious incident, every attempt at interference. If this escalated to a legal battle, which seemed increasingly likely, he wanted documentation of the systematic campaign against him. His phone buzzed with a text from Michael. "Surveillance confirms. Black sedan outside your building for past 3 hours. 2 occupants. Professional security types. Not police." Robert moved to the window, peering down at the street 18 floors below. Even from this height, the vehicle was visible, parked across the street, its engine occasionally running to combat the March chill. A chill ran through him that had nothing to do with the temperature. The stakes were rising. Harrison was having him watched, assessed, perhaps looking for vulnerabilities to exploit. And Lily, innocent, increasingly trusting Lily, was caught in the middle. Robert made one final call to his pilot, confirming their early departure. Then he checked the security system, ensuring every entrance was sealed, every camera operational. Tomorrow they would retreat to Key West to regroup and plan their next move. But Robert harbored no illusions about what was coming. A high-stakes battle against a powerful opponent who had already demonstrated his willingness to eliminate obstacles. As he passed Lily's room on his way to bed, he paused in the doorway, watching her peaceful sleep. On her nightstand sat her latest drawing, the penthouse again, but this time with dark clouds gathering around it. Even in her art, she sensed the approaching storm. Robert felt his resolve harden. He had built his fortune by identifying weaknesses in corporate adversaries and exploiting them ruthlessly. Now, for Lily's sake, he would need to become not just a businessman, but a warrior, one fighting not for profit, but for the right to protect a child who had already lost too much. Robert's property in Key West sat at the end of a private peninsula, accessible only by a winding road, monitored by discreet security cameras. The Spanish-style villa, with its red-tiled roof and whitewashed walls, overlooked the Gulf of Mexico from 3 sides. Palm trees swayed in the constant breeze, and bougainvillea cascaded over garden walls in vibrant splashes of purple and pink. For Lily, it was paradise. The tension that had shadowed her since their hasty departure from New York melted away as she explored the property's gardens, infinity pool, and private beach. Robert watched her transformation with a mixture of relief and sadness. This was the carefree child she should always have been, unburdened by abandonment and hidden identities. "Look what I found," she called on their third morning, running toward him across the sand, something clutched in her palm. She opened her hand to reveal a perfect spiral shell, pink and white and impossibly delicate. "Can I keep it?" "Of course," Robert replied, smiling at her enthusiasm. "We can find a special place for it in your room." Lily beamed, carefully placing the shell in the pocket of her sundress. "I'm going to start a collection. Eleanor says there are sand dollars at the far end of the beach." As she raced off to continue her exploration, Robert's phone vibrated. Michael Donovan's name flashed on the screen. "Any developments?" Robert asked, moving toward the house for privacy. "Several," Michael replied. "First, the tax fraud investigation has been officially closed. Our contacts at the IRS confirmed it was based on falsified information. That's something, at least. There's more. I've traced the source of the anonymous calls to Lily's school and child services. They originated from a law firm with long-standing ties to Harrison Global." Robert felt his jaw tighten. Direct evidence linking Harrison to the harassment. "Not quite smoking gun level, but close," Michael agreed. "But here's the concerning part. My sources indicate someone accessed the sealed adoption filing within hours of submission. Someone with high-level court clearance. Harrison has a judge in his pocket, or someone in the clerk's office. Either way, they now have your Key West address." Robert glanced toward the beach, where Lily was crouched over a tidal pool, her blonde hair shining in the sun. "We've got top-tier security here, limited access points, surveillance, trained personnel." "That's good, because according to my contacts in Boston, William Harrison left for Miami yesterday. Private jet, minimal entourage." A cold weight settled in Robert's stomach. "He's coming himself. Looks that way. This deal must be even more time-sensitive than we thought." After ending the call, Robert summoned his head of security, a former Navy SEAL named Jack Reeves. "I need enhanced protocols, effective immediately," Robert instructed. "No visitors without prior authorization from me personally. Double the perimeter patrols, and I want a security detail for Lily at all times, discreet, but never more than 20 feet away." Jack nodded, his weathered face betraying no emotion. "Expecting trouble, sir?" "Let's just say I'd rather be paranoid than unprepared." That evening, as they ate dinner on the terrace overlooking the ocean, Lily sensed the change in atmosphere despite Robert's attempts at normalcy. "Why are there more guards today?" she asked, setting down her fork. "And why is that man in the blue shirt always watching me?" Robert should have known she would notice. For all her childlike enthusiasm about shells and tidal pools, Lily possessed uncanny observational skills. "It's just an extra precaution," he replied, attempting to sound casual. "When I'm away from New York, there are additional security measures." She studied him with that penetrating gaze that seemed to see right through his reassurances. "Is someone looking for us?" The directness of her question caught him off guard. "What makes you ask that?" "You keep checking your phone. The guards talk into their earpieces when boats go by, and you look worried when you think I'm not watching." Robert sighed. This child deserved honesty, even if he had to temper it for her age. "Yes, Lily. There's someone who might be looking for us, but you don't need to be afraid. That's why we have security, to keep us safe while I handle the situation." "Is it because of who I was before? Before the children's home?" Robert set down his own fork, giving her his full attention. "Why do you ask that?" Lily traced patterns in the condensation on her water glass. "Sometimes I remember things. A big house with a garden, a room with star stickers on the ceiling, a man who was angry a lot, and my mother crying." "Do you remember the man's face?" She shook her head. "Not really, just that he was tall and his voice got scary when he was mad." Robert chose his next words carefully. "Lily, I believe the person looking for us might be connected to your past, but I promise you this, no one is going to take you away. Not while I'm here." She nodded solemnly, then slipped from her chair to come around the table. Without warning, she wrapped her arms around his neck in a fierce hug. "I won't let them take you away either," she whispered. That night, Robert couldn't sleep. He reviewed security footage on his tablet, checked entry logs, and finally stepped onto his private balcony to scan the darkened grounds. The property was secure, lights illuminating the perimeter, guards visible at key positions. Yet something felt wrong. A sixth sense developed through years of high-stakes business deals and hostile takeovers. Harrison was coming, and Robert doubted he would respect legal niceties or property boundaries. His instinct proved correct the very next morning. Robert was reviewing documents in his study when Jack Reeves appeared in the doorway, expression grim. "Sir, there's a situation at the main gate. 3 men in a black Escalade requesting entry. One claims to be William Harrison, says he needs to speak with you about his daughter." Robert felt adrenaline surge through his system. He used those exact words? His daughter? "Yes, sir. He has documentation, DNA test results, birth certificate, legal identification." "Deny them entry. Tell Harrison if he wants to talk, he can have his attorney contact mine." Jack hesitated. "Sir, he's threatening to return with local authorities and a court order. Claims you're harboring his child illegally." Robert stood, straightening his shirt. "Let him in, just him, not his associates. Have him escorted to the main terrace, and make sure Lily stays in the east wing with Eleanor." 20 minutes later, Robert stood on the terrace overlooking the ocean, watching as a silver-haired man in an impeccable linen suit approached. Even without the photographs Michael had shown him, Robert would have recognized William Harrison. He carried himself with the unconscious authority of someone accustomed to power, his handsome features set in lines of cold determination. 2. Security guards flanked him until they reached the terrace, then retreated to a respectful distance at Robert's nod. "Mr. Mitchell," Harrison said, his Boston accent barely detectable, "I appreciate you seeing me, though I would have preferred less dramatic circumstances for our first meeting." "Cut the pleasantries, Harrison," Robert replied coldly. "We both know why you're here." Harrison smiled thinly, taking a seat without invitation. "Indeed, I've come about my daughter, Elizabeth. I believe you know her as Lily." "The daughter you reported drowned at sea 3 years ago? The one whose mother mysteriously disappeared? After trying to escape from you, that daughter?" The smile vanished from Harrison's face. "You're operating under serious misconceptions, Mr. Mitchell. My wife suffered from mental health issues. She took our daughter and fled during a psychotic episode. The yacht incident was a tragic accident, one I've spent 3 years trying to recover from." "Spare me the grieving father act," Robert said. "I know about Caroline's financial preparations, her meetings with Beaumont, the succession clause in your company trust. I know about the unidentified woman found in Maryland with a system full of sedatives." A flicker of surprise crossed Harrison's features before his mask of control returned. "You've been quite thorough in your investigation, but you've constructed a conspiracy where there is only tragedy. Now, I've brought proof of my paternity." He removed an envelope from his jacket. "DNA results, Elizabeth's birth certificate, family photographs. The evidence is irrefutable." "I don't dispute that you're her biological father," Robert replied. "What I question is your right to reclaim her after abandoning her to the foster system for 3 years. Harrison's expression hardened. "I never abandoned her. I thought she was deceased. It was only recently that information emerged suggesting she might have survived. Convenient timing, with your company's sale approaching finalization." "My business dealings are irrelevant to this discussion." $3 billion seems extremely relevant, Robert countered, especially with a succession clause requiring you to share with any living direct heir. Harrison leaned forward, dropping all pretense of civility. "You're out of your depth, Mitchell. This isn't some corporate takeover where the worst outcome is financial loss. Elizabeth is my daughter, my blood, my legacy. I've permitted your temporary guardianship because it served a purpose, but that arrangement has reached its conclusion." "Permitted?" Robert felt cold fury rising. "You've been aware of her whereabouts all along." "Let's just say I have resources that keep me informed of matters affecting my interests." Harrison stood, straightening his jacket. "I'm prepared to be reasonable. My previous offer still stands. $10 million and a guarantee of the finest education for Elizabeth at a school of your choosing." You can present it to the world as a mutual decision made in the child's best interest. And if I refuse? Then things become considerably less pleasant. Harrison's tone was conversational, as if discussing a minor business negotiation. The sealed juvenile records from your time in foster care become public. The teenage arrests, the psychiatric evaluation after your parents' accident, all very understanding given your circumstances, but hardly the background of an ideal adoptive parent. Robert kept his expression neutral despite the shock. Harrison had accessed records that had been sealed by court order when he turned 18. Then there's the matter of your company, Harrison continued. Mitchell Investments has prospered remarkably, but every business has vulnerabilities. Clients who can be persuaded to withdraw their portfolios, regulators who can be encouraged to look more closely at certain transactions. You've built an impressive house of cards, Mr. Mitchell. It would be unfortunate to see it collapse. You're threatening me. I'm outlining consequences, Harrison corrected. Elizabeth is returning to her rightful place. The only question is whether you benefit from the transition or suffer from opposing it. Robert felt something snap inside him, the last restraint on his anger. Let me outline some consequences for you, Harrison. If you attempt to take Lily through intimidation or legal manipulation, I will dedicate every resource I possess to exposing you. The suspicious circumstances of your wife's disappearance, the financial irregularities at Harrison Global, your connections to questionable entities in Eastern Europe, all of it becomes front-page news. Harrison's composed expression faltered slightly. You would put Elizabeth through a public spectacle? Subject her to media scrutiny and court appearances? That hardly seems in her best interest. Don't you dare invoke her best interests, Robert growled. You didn't search for her for 3 years. You didn't sit with her through nightmares, or help her learn to trust again, or watch her slowly emerge from the shell she built to protect herself from people exactly like you, people who see her as an asset to be controlled, not a child to be loved. A touching speech, Harrison replied, his tone dismissive. But sentimentality doesn't change biology. She is my daughter. Biology doesn't make you a father, Robert countered. Love, commitment, sacrifice, those make you a father. And in all those ways, she is my daughter now. The two men stared at each other in charged silence, the gulf between their worldviews unbridgeable. You have 24 hours to reconsider, Harrison finally said. After that, I return with attorneys and court orders. Elizabeth will be coming home with me one way or another. As Harrison turned to leave, a small voice froze both men in place. My name is Lily. She stood in the doorway to the terrace, small but defiant, Eleanor hovering anxiously behind her. How long she had been there, how much she had heard, Robert couldn't tell. But her eyes were fixed on Harrison with a mixture of fear and recognition. Harrison recovered first, his stern expression softening into something that might have passed for warmth, if not for the calculation in his eyes. Elizabeth, my little princess, do you remember me? Lily took a step backward, moving closer to Robert. My name is Lily now. Of course, if you prefer that name. You've grown so much. Harrison took a step toward her. Do you remember our house? Your room with the stars on the ceiling? The garden where you had your swing? Lily's expression flickered with uncertainty. Sometimes. In dreams. They're not dreams, sweetheart. They're memories of your real home, your real family. Harrison knelt to her level, extending his hand. I've been looking for you for so long. No, you haven't, Lily said, with the simple clarity of a child stating an obvious truth. If you were looking, you would have found me before. Harrison's outstretched hand wavered. It's complicated, Elizabeth. There were terrible mistakes, misunderstandings. My mother was scared of you, Lily continued, her voice steady despite the tremor in her small frame. She said we had to hide. Harrison's mask slipped, revealing a flash of cold anger before he recovered. Your mother was confused. She wasn't well. She took you away when she shouldn't have. She sang to me in French, Lily said, and she wore a ring with a blue stone. Yes, that's right, Harrison seized on this detail. A sapphire. It was my grandmother's. I gave it to your mother on our 5th anniversary. Robert moved to Lily's side, placing a protective hand on her shoulder. Lily, you don't have to talk to him if you don't want to. She looked up at Robert, then back at Harrison. My mother said never to go with him, that he would take me away forever. Harrison stood, his pleasant facade cracking. That's enough of this charade. Elizabeth is coming home where she belongs. My attorneys will contact you, Mitchell. Expect formal proceedings within days." As Harrison strode away, escorted by security, Lily pressed against Robert's side. "I don't want to go with him," she whispered. "He was the one my mother was afraid of." Robert knelt beside her. "Listen to me, Lily. You're not going anywhere you don't want to go. I promise you that. But he said he has papers and lawyers. So do I. And more importantly, I have the truth." Robert looked into her frightened blue eyes. "Do you trust me?" She nodded without hesitation. "Then trust me to fight for you. Because that's what real fathers do." Later that night, after Lily had finally fallen asleep in the bedroom adjoining his own, Robert called David Levinson. Harrison made contact in person. "He's threatening legal action, intimidation, exposure of sealed records, the works. We need to move now." "I've already filed for an emergency hearing," David replied. "But Rob, if he has DNA confirmation and documentation proving she's Elizabeth Harrison, the court will give significant weight to biological parentage. Even if the biological parent abandoned her for 3 years and may be responsible for her mother's disappearance, those are serious allegations that would require substantial evidence. Do you have that evidence?" Robert thought of Michael's ongoing investigation, the fragmented trail connecting Harrison to Caroline's fate. "We're working on it. But what about Lily's wishes? She's clearly stated she doesn't want to go with Harrison." "The court will consider her preferences, especially given her age. But they'll also assess whether those preferences might be influenced by her current circumstances or attachment to you. So they could dismiss her fear of Harrison as mere loyalty to me." "It's possible. We need to build a comprehensive case, not just against Harrison, but for you as the better parent regardless of biology." After ending the call, Robert stepped onto the balcony. The night was clear, stars reflected in the dark mirror of the Gulf. Somewhere in Boston, William Harrison was probably making similar calls to his own attorneys, marshalling the considerable resources at his command. The coming battle would not be fought with physical force, but with legal maneuvers, character assassination, and the cold calculus of influence. And at the center of it all was a child who had already lost too much, whose fragile trust in the world was once again being threatened. Robert gripped the balcony railing, staring out at the vastness of the ocean. Harrison might have wealth, power, and biological connection on his side. But Robert had something more important: Lily's love and trust earned day by day through consistency and care. In the quiet darkness, he made a silent vow. Whatever it took, whatever personal cost, he would ensure that Lily never again became that solitary figure, watching from the corner of her own drawings. She belonged in the center now, safe, loved, and home at last. The flight back to New York was subdued. Robert had decided that retreating to Key West had been a tactical error. It made them look as if they were hiding, potentially undermining their legal position. Better to return and face the coming storm head-on, surrounded by their full support network and resources. Lily sat beside him on the private jet, her sketchbook open but untouched. Since Harrison's appearance, she had been quieter, her nightmares returning with disturbing frequency. "Are we going to court?" she asked suddenly, breaking the silence. Robert set aside his tablet. "Yes, there will be some hearings where judges need to listen to both sides. Will I have to talk to them? Possibly. The judge might want to hear from you directly, to understand what you want." Lily twisted a colored pencil between her fingers. "What if they don't believe me?" "Why wouldn't they believe you?" "It's because I'm just a kid, and he's a grown-up with lots of money." Her perception of the power dynamics was unnervingly accurate. "Being a kid doesn't make your feelings less important," Robert assured her. "In fact, in cases like this, what you want matters very much to the court." Lily seemed unconvinced. "The Crawfords didn't care what I wanted. Neither did the Brennans. Or the Michelsons." Each name represented another foster placement that had failed her, another household where her needs had been secondary to adult convenience. No wonder she doubted that her voice would be heard now. "This is different," Robert said gently. "I care what you want. My lawyer cares. And we're going to make sure the judge cares too." She nodded, turning back to her blank page. After a moment she began to draw. Not her usual house scene, but what appeared to be a courtroom with small figures standing before a towering bench. Back in Manhattan, changes were immediately apparent. Paparazzi clustered near Robert's building, alerted to the developing story of a billionaire custody battle. Security guards created a protective corridor from the car to the private elevator, shielding Lily from the shouted questions and camera flashes. "Why are those people taking pictures?" she asked, clinging to Robert's hand as they hurried inside. "Because people are interested in our story," he replied, keeping his tone light despite his anger at the intrusion. "But they don't need to know the details. That's private between us and the court." Upstairs, Eleanor had prepared the penthouse for their return, making it a sanctuary from the chaos brewing below. David Levinson arrived shortly after, bringing a stack of legal documents and a reassuring smile for Lily. "Hello again," he said, kneeling to her level. "Do you remember me from our meeting last month?" Lily nodded. "You're Robert's lawyer. You had candy in your office." David laughed. "That's right. And I brought some more today." He produced a small bag of jelly beans from his pocket. "Would you like to help Eleanor make some hot chocolate while I talk boring legal stuff with Robert?" After Lily left with Eleanor, David's expression turned serious. "Harrison filed for emergency custody yesterday, claiming parental alienation and concealment of the child's true identity." "That was fast," Robert noted. "He's not wasting any time. The preliminary hearing is scheduled for tomorrow morning. Judge Rebecca Winters, known for being thorough but traditionally inclined toward biological family reunification. Not ideal. No, but we have some counterpoints ready. I've compiled Lily's complete history in the foster system, statements from her social worker and therapist about her progress with you, and school reports showing her academic and social improvement. Our narrative is clear. After years of instability and abandonment, Lily is finally thriving with you. Disrupting that would cause significant psychological harm. And Harrison's claim that I concealed her identity. We're countering with the fact that you initiated an investigation into her background as soon as you suspected there might be more to her story, demonstrating good faith. Furthermore, we're questioning why, if Elizabeth Harrison was so precious to her father, no meaningful search was conducted after the alleged drowning. No private investigators, no age progression photos, nothing. Robert nodded approvingly. "What about Caroline's disappearance?" David hesitated. "That's trickier. We have circumstantial connections, but nothing definitive, linking Harrison to foul play. If we make accusations we can't substantiate, it could backfire severely. So we focus on Lily's well-being and the abandonment angle." "Exactly. We position you as the stable, loving parent she needs, while questioning Harrison's 3-year absence and sudden interest coinciding with his company sale." After David left, Robert found Lily in the kitchen, helping Eleanor prepare dinner. The normalcy of the scene, Lily carefully tearing lettuce leaves for a salad, Eleanor showing her how to check if the pasta was done, struck him as both precious and fragile. This domestic tranquility, so hard-won over months of patient relationship building, was now threatened by outside forces. "Can I help?" he asked, rolling up his sleeves. Lily looked up, a genuine smile breaking through her earlier solemnity. "You can grate the cheese. Eleanor says I'm still too little for the grater." "An important job," Robert agreed, taking the block of parmesan she offered. "Every good meal needs teamwork." That evening, after Lily was asleep, Michael Donovan arrived with updates on his investigation. "I've been digging into Harrison's movements around the time Caroline disappeared," he explained, spreading photographs across Robert's desk. 3 days after she left Lily at the service station, Harrison's private jet flew from Boston to a small airfield in Virginia. He stayed for less than 6 hours before returning, near where the unidentified woman was found. "It's within 30 miles. And here's where it gets interesting." Michael pointed to financial records. Harrison made a cash withdrawal of $50,000 the day before the trip. No clear record of how it was spent. Payoff money? Possibly. I'm still working on connecting the dots, but the timeline is suspicious. And there's more. Michael produced a folder with medical records. The autopsy on the unidentified woman noted needle marks consistent with sedative injection. Not typical of self-administration. Robert studied the documents. This suggests Caroline didn't take the sedatives voluntarily. Exactly. Someone administered them. enough to cause respiratory depression but maintain plausible deniability as a potential self-administered overdose. Michael's expression was grim. I've seen this pattern before in my FBI days. It's a sophisticated approach to eliminating someone while creating reasonable doubt. Can we prove Harrison's involvement? Not conclusively yet, but I'm following a promising lead. The pilot who flew Harrison's jet that day. He left Harrison's employ shortly after and bought a fishing charter business in Florida. Cash purchase. Conscience money. Derek or hush money. I'm working on approaching him carefully. The next morning, Robert helped Lily prepare for her school day, maintaining their normal routine despite the looming court appearance. I'll pick you up early today, he explained as he adjusted her uniform collar. We need to go to the courthouse this afternoon. Lily nodded solemnly. Will I see him there? She didn't need to specify who him was. Possibly. But I'll be with you the entire time, and you don't have to speak with him if you don't want to. She was quiet for a moment, smoothing her skirt with small fingers. I remember more things now. About before, Robert knelt to her level. What kinds of things? Arguments. My mother crying. Him shouting about money and papers. Her brow furrowed with the effort of accessing fragmentary memories. Once he locked us in my room. My mother pushed my dresser against the door. Each revelation strengthened Robert's resolve. Whatever legal challenges lay ahead, he would fight with everything he had to protect this child from returning to a home that had terrified her. The preliminary hearing was set for 3 o'clock. Robert and David arrived early, navigating past reporters clustered on the courthouse steps. Inside, the atmosphere was charged with the particular tension of high-stakes family court proceedings, a mixture of legal formality and raw emotional undercurrents. William Harrison was already present, flanked by 3 attorneys in expensive suits. He nodded curtly to Robert, his expression revealing nothing. Judge Rebecca Winters, a stern-faced woman in her 60s, called the hearing to order promptly. This is a preliminary determination in the matter of parental rights regarding Elizabeth Harrison, also known as Lily Jane Doe. We have competing claims before us. Biological paternity from Mr. William Harrison versus established guardianship, and pending adoption by Mr. Robert Mitchell. She peered over her glasses at the assembled attorneys. I'll hear opening statements, but be advised, my primary concern is the well-being of the child, not the convenience or preferences of the adults involved. Harrison's lead attorney, James Fulton, spoke first. Your Honor, this case is fundamentally about a father's right to raise his own daughter. 3 years ago, William Harrison suffered an unimaginable tragedy when his wife and daughter were reported lost at sea. He has grieved, rebuilt his life, and never abandoned hope that by some miracle his child might have survived. Fulton produced the DNA test results. Science confirms what Mr. Harrison knew in his heart. The child currently in Mr. Mitchell's temporary care is indeed Elizabeth Harrison. While Mr. Harrison appreciates Mr. Mitchell's interim guardianship, it's time for Elizabeth to return to her rightful home, her rightful family, and her rightful legacy. David Levinson rose next. Your Honor, this case is about a child's well-being, not abstract notions of rightful anything. Lily, as she prefers to be called, has spent 3 years in the foster system. During that time, she was placed with 6 different families, developed serious attachment issues, and demonstrated through her art and behavior the profound trauma of abandonment. He displayed photographs of Lily's drawings, the recurring images of a child watching families from the outside. It was only after coming into Mr. Mitchell's care that Lily began to heal, to trust, to place herself within the family circle rather than outside it. David's voice hardened slightly. If Mr. Harrison is indeed Lily's biological father, we must ask why no meaningful search was conducted for his supposedly beloved daughter. No private investigators hired, no age progression photos circulated, no DNA samples submitted to missing children's databases. Nothing. Until, coincidentally, Mr. Harrison was finalizing the sale of his company, a transaction that would be significantly complicated by the reappearance of a direct heir. Fulton objected immediately. Your Honor, these insinuations are offensive and irrelevant. Mr. Harrison believed his daughter was deceased, based on official Coast Guard determinations. Judge Winters raised a hand for silence. I'll allow the context is potentially relevant to the timing of Mr. Harrison's claim. Continue, Mr. Levinson. Thank you, Your Honor. Our position is simple. Lily is finally stable, attached, and thriving. Uprooting her now to satisfy Mr. Harrison's belated parental claims would cause profound psychological harm. We ask the court to maintain her current placement, pending full evaluation of all factors, including Lily's own clearly stated preference to remain with Mr. Mitchell. After both attorneys presented their initial evidence, Judge Winters announced she would speak privately with Lily in her chambers, with only a court-appointed child psychologist present. This is standard procedure to allow the child to speak freely without feeling pressured by either party, she explained. I'll make my determination regarding temporary custody following this conversation. As Lily was led away by the court officer, she looked back at Robert, her expression a mixture of fear and determination. He gave her an encouraging nod, hoping she could sense his unwavering support even as she disappeared down the hallway. The 45 minutes that followed were among the longest of Robert's life. He sat rigidly in the courtroom, conscious of Harrison's presence several seats away, both men suspended in tense anticipation of a decision that would shape the coming legal battle. When Judge Winters finally returned, Lily was not with her. The judge's expression revealed nothing as she resumed her position. I've spoken at length with the child in question, she began. She is articulate, thoughtful, and remarkably self-aware for her age. She has expressed clear memories of her early childhood, including her mother's apparent fear of her father and their hasty departure from their home. She has also expressed an equally clear preference to remain in Mr. Mitchell's care, where she reports feeling safe and wanted for the first time since her mother's disappearance. Judge Winters removed her glasses. In cases involving parental rights, courts generally favor biological connections. However, we must balance this presumption against the child's best interests, particularly in situations involving prolonged absence or potential harm. She shuffled her papers. At this juncture, I am ordering that temporary custody remain with Mr. Mitchell, with whom the child has formed a significant attachment. However, I am also ordering supervised visitation for Mr. Harrison to begin rebuilding his relationship with his daughter. Harrison's attorneys immediately protested, while David nodded in satisfaction. The arrangement was not ideal from Robert's perspective. He would have preferred no contact between Lily and Harrison, but maintaining primary custody was the essential victory. Additionally, Judge Winters continued, I am ordering a full investigation into the circumstances surrounding Caroline Harrison's disappearance and the child's abandonment. Mr. Harrison will provide complete access to financial records, travel documentation, and communication from that period. The court appoints Special Investigator Marcus Chen to oversee this process. She fixed both men with a stern gaze. Let me be very clear. If evidence emerges that either party has acted against the child's interests, whether through abandonment, concealment, or manipulation, it will significantly impact my final determination of permanent custody. This court will reconvene in 30 days for a comprehensive hearing. As the session concluded, Robert felt a complex mixture of relief and apprehension. They had won the first skirmish, but the war was far from over. Harrison would undoubtedly intensify his efforts, and the supervised visitation created new vulnerabilities. Outside the courtroom, Lily waited with the court psychologist. Her face brightened when she saw Robert, and she ran to him, wrapping her arms around his waist. "Did I do okay?" she whispered. "You did perfectly," he assured her, smoothing her hair. "You told the truth and the judge listened. That's all anyone could ask." As they turned to leave, William Harrison approached, his expression carefully modulated for the court officers and social workers observing nearby. "Elizabeth," he said softly, "I look forward to our visit this weekend. There's so much I want to tell you about your early years, about your mother, about the family you come from." Lily pressed closer to Robert's side. "My name is Lily now," she replied, her voice small but steady. Harrison's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. "Of course, if you prefer. We have plenty of time to reacquaint ourselves." He glanced at Robert, a cold warning in his eyes. 30 days isn't very long, Mitchell. Enjoy them. As Harrison walked away, Robert felt Lily trembling slightly against him. I don't want to visit him, she whispered. I know, sweetheart, but sometimes we have to follow court orders even when we don't like them. I'll be nearby the entire time, and the supervisor will make sure everything is okay. Promise? I promise. He squeezed her hand reassuringly. Now how about we stop for ice cream on the way home? I think we both deserve a treat after today. That night, long after Lily had fallen asleep, Robert sat in his study with David and Michael, planning their strategy for the coming month. The court-appointed investigator is a wild card, David noted. Chen has a reputation for thoroughness, but he'll have access to information from both sides. We need to ensure our case is airtight. I've got a promising lead on the pilot, Michael added, and I'm meeting with a former Harrison Global executive who left under mysterious circumstances 2 years ago. He's hinted he has information about financial irregularities that might tie back to Caroline's escape attempts. Robert nodded, studying the timeline they had constructed on his tablet, a meticulous reconstruction of the months leading to Caroline's disappearance and aftermath. We have 30 days to uncover what Harrison has spent 3 years concealing, he said. Let's make them count. Later, as Robert checked on Lily before going to bed himself, he found her sleeping fitfully, her forehead creased with tension even in slumber. On her nightstand lay a new drawing, the courtroom scene she had begun on the plane, now complete with detailed figures. The judge loomed large from her bench. Harrison stood with his attorneys on one side, Robert on the other, and in the center, a small figure, Lily herself caught between opposing forces. But what struck Robert most was a fourth figure, drawn with lighter strokes, almost transparent, standing behind Lily with a protective hand on her shoulder, a woman with flowing blonde hair and a blue ring. Even in Lily's subconscious, Caroline seemed to be reaching through time, still trying to protect her daughter from the man she had fled. Robert gently adjusted Lily's blanket, brushing a strand of hair from her face. We won't let him take you, he whispered. I promise. As he turned to leave, Lily stirred slightly. Daddy? She murmured, still half asleep. The word, spoken for the first time, settled in Robert's heart like a vow. Biology and legal documents suddenly seemed like pale, bureaucratic things compared to the trust contained in that single word. I'm here, he replied softly. Go back to sleep. Everything's going to be okay. Whether he was reassuring Lily or himself, Robert wasn't entirely sure. But as he closed her door, leaving it ajar as she preferred, he felt a renewed determination. Harrison might have DNA and resources on his side, but Robert had something equally powerful, a child's love and the fierce protective instinct it had awakened in him. The coming battle would test both men to their limits. But for Robert, the stakes transcended money, reputation, or even legal victory. What hung in the balance was nothing less than a child's chance at the family she deserved, and his own. Chance to be the father she had called him, in that unguarded moment between dreams and waking. The following weeks unfolded in a carefully choreographed dance of legal maneuvers, investigations, and the ongoing effort to maintain normalcy for Lily. Robert adjusted his work schedule dramatically, delegating responsibilities to his executive team to free up time for court appearances, strategy sessions with David, and most importantly, being present for Lily during this turbulent period. The first supervised visitation with William Harrison took place at a neutral facility in Midtown, staffed by professionals trained in high-conflict family situations. Robert waited in an adjacent room, reviewing documents while keeping one eye on the closed-circuit monitor, showing Lily and Harrison in the visitation space. Harrison had brought photographs apparently of Lily's early childhood, the Boston home, birthday celebrations, family vacations. Through the monitor's tinny audio, Robert could hear him narrating each image, building a narrative of the happy family they had supposedly been before Caroline's mental health issues had torn them apart. Lily sat stiffly across from him, responding with minimal politeness but offering no emotional engagement. When Harrison attempted to touch her hand, she subtly withdrew it, pretending to reach for a glass of water. "You're so like your mother," Harrison said at one point. his voice softening with what might have been genuine emotion. She was talented too. Did you know she was a concert pianist before we married? She gave it up to focus on family. Did she want to stop playing? Lily asked, her first spontaneous question of the session. Harrison paused, momentarily caught off guard. She wanted to be a good mother to you, that was her priority. But did she miss it, the piano? I suppose she did sometimes. Harrison recovered smoothly. She had a beautiful Steinway in our music room. I've kept it perfectly maintained, waiting for you to come home. Do you play? No, princess, that was your mother's talent. Lily flinched slightly at the old nickname. Robert is teaching me chess. He says I have a good mind for strategy. Harrison's expression tightened briefly before he smiled. That's wonderful. When you come home, I'll hire the finest chess tutors in Boston. I don't want tutors, Lily replied quietly. I like playing with Robert. The session continued for the mandated hour, tension vibrating beneath the surface of Harrison's carefully constructed charm offensive. When it finally ended, Lily practically ran to Robert in the waiting area, pressing against his side as if seeking protection. How did it go? He asked gently as they walked toward the elevator. He brought pictures, she replied, but they didn't feel like my memories. They felt like someone else's life. Robert nodded, understanding precisely what she meant. Sometimes memories are complicated, especially from when we're very young. He wants me to call him Dad, she added, her voice dropping to a near whisper. But he doesn't feel like my dad. Robert's heart constricted with a mixture of compassion and fierce protectiveness. You don't have to call him anything you're not comfortable with, Lily. That's your choice. When they reached the parking garage, Robert noticed a dark sedan idling nearby, its windows tinted. Harrison's security detail, undoubtedly. The message was clear. They were being watched. Assessed, studied for vulnerabilities. That evening, as Lily worked on homework at the dining table, Michael called with a breakthrough. The pilot agreed to talk, he said without preamble. But he's scared. Wants immunity guarantees before giving a formal statement. What's he afraid of? Accessory charges, potentially. He claims he didn't know what was happening at the time, but he's carried suspicions for years. Robert felt a surge of anticipation. This could be what we need. What's the timeline? I've arranged for Marcus Chen, the court's investigator, to meet with him tomorrow. If his testimony is compelling, it could dramatically change the direction of this case. The next day brought another development. David called while Robert was in a meeting with his company's board, explaining the ongoing situation and his reduced role for the duration of the custody case. Harrison's attorney just filed a motion to expedite the final custody determination, David reported. They're pushing for a decision within 2 weeks instead of 30 days. On what grounds? They're claiming the continued separation is causing irreparable harm to the father-daughter bond, and that you're actively alienating Lily against her biological father. Robert felt a flash of anger. That's absurd. I've complied with every visitation requirement, encouraged her to keep an open mind. I know, David interrupted, but they're constructing a narrative that portrays you as the villain in this situation, the manipulative outsider preventing a grieving father from reuniting with his long-lost daughter. How likely is the judge to grant this motion? Ordinarily, I'd say unlikely. But Harrison has connections, and family court judges face enormous pressure in high-profile cases. We need to prepare for an accelerated timeline. The walls seem to be closing in. If the final hearing was moved up, they might not have sufficient time to develop the evidence needed to counter Harrison's claims. That evening, Robert was helping Lily prepare for bed when his phone buzzed with a text from Michael. Emergency. Call immediately. I need to make a quick call, he told Lily. Why don't you pick out a book for us to read when I get back? In his study, he dialed Michael's number. What's happened? The pilot's dead. Michael's voice was tight with controlled fury. Apparent heart attack this morning, just hours before his scheduled meeting with Chen. Robert felt cold shock wash through him. That's convenient timing. Too convenient. The man was 46, physically fit, no history of cardiac issues. I'm pushing for a toxicology screen, but these things can be difficult to trace if done properly. You think Harrison had him silenced? I think a key witness in a case involving billions of dollars suddenly died before he could testify. Draw your own conclusions. Michael paused. But there's more. Before he died, he sent me something. A flight manifest from the Virginia trip 3 years ago. Harrison wasn't alone on that flight. He brought a private physician with him, one who specializes in psychiatric pharmaceuticals. The implication was clear and chilling. If Harrison had traveled with a doctor who could administer sedatives professionally, it strengthened the theory that Caroline's fate had not been self-determined. Can we prove any of this? The manifest is documented evidence. As for the rest, we're working every angle. Chen is now fully engaged. Harrison's sudden urgency and the pilot's convenient demise have triggered his investigative instincts. After hanging up, Robert returned to Lily's room, struggling to compartmentalize his turbulent emotions. She sat cross-legged on her bed, a book of illustrated fairy tales open beside her. "Everything okay?" she asked, more perceptive than any 8-year-old should need to be. "Just some work stuff," he replied, forcing a smile. "What are we reading tonight?" As he read to her about enchanted forests and brave princesses, Robert couldn't help seeing parallels to their own situation. A child in danger, powerful forces arrayed against her, the thin protection of love against cold ambition. When Lily finally drifted off to sleep, Robert remained beside her bed, watching the gentle rise and fall of her chest. The thought of Harrison potentially winning custody was unbearable. A man who might have been responsible for Caroline's demise, who had certainly abandoned his daughter to the foster system for 3 years, now presented himself as the devoted father eager to reclaim his child. The next morning brought a summons from Judge Winters. The preliminary hearing had been rescheduled to accommodate Harrison's motion to expedite. The case would now be heard in just 10 days. "This isn't necessarily bad news," David cautioned when Robert called in alarm. "Judge Winters is also demanding accelerated discovery. Harrison must produce all financial and travel records within 48 hours. Can he delay or obstruct? Not without serious consequences. Winters made it clear that any non-compliance would be viewed as evidence of bad faith. The following days passed in a blur of legal filings, witness preparation, and the ongoing struggle to shield Lily from the worst of the tension. Robert arranged for her to continue with her therapist twice weekly, providing a safe space to process her conflicted feelings about Harrison and the visitations she still found distressing. 5 days before the final hearing, Marcus Chen requested a private meeting with both Robert and Harrison separately. Robert went first, sitting across from the investigator in a sparse conference room at the courthouse. "Mr. Mitchell," Chen began, his expression professionally neutral, "I've been investigating the circumstances surrounding Caroline Harrison's disappearance and Elizabeth, or Lily's, abandonment for the past 3 weeks. I've interviewed dozens of witnesses, reviewed financial transactions, travel records, and medical reports." He placed a folder on the table between them. "I'm sharing this with you, before it becomes part of the official record, because I believe you deserve an opportunity to prepare yourself and Lily for what will likely be a difficult hearing." Robert opened the folder to find photographs, bank statements, and what appeared to be phone records. The evidence suggests a pattern of financial control and psychological isolation imposed on Caroline Harrison in the months before her disappearance, Chen explained. Multiple witnesses report that she was increasingly withdrawn from social events, had limited access to funds outside her household allowance, and appeared anxious in her husband's presence. Chen pointed to the bank records. When Caroline began liquidating assets, she was careful to move small amounts through multiple accounts, behavior consistent with someone fearing monitoring or repercussions. And her disappearance after leaving Lily at the service station? Chen's expression darkened. "The timing aligns with William Harrison's unscheduled trip to Virginia. We've confirmed he traveled with Dr. Alan Mercer, a psychiatrist who has prescribed sedatives for Harrison himself in the past." He hesitated before continuing. "The unidentified woman found in Maryland had injection sites consistent with professionally administered sedatives. The case was initially classified as a possible voluntary overdose, but the medical examiner noted discrepancies he couldn't resolve." "So you believe Harrison was directly involved?" I'm not making that determination officially, Chen replied carefully. But the circumstantial evidence is compelling enough that I've referred the matter to federal authorities for a fresh investigation. Robert absorbed this information, a mixture of vindication and sorrow washing through him. Caroline's fears had been justified, her desperate attempt to save her daughter rooted in genuine danger. What impact will this have on the custody determination? That's Judge Winter's decision, Chen replied, but I will be testifying about my findings, and I've included a recommendation that Lily remain in your care pending the outcome of the criminal investigation. The final days before the hearing were electric with tension. Harrison's attorneys filed multiple motions to exclude Chen's findings, arguing they were prejudicial and based on speculation. Judge Winters denied each motion, insisting that all relevant information be presented for her consideration. The night before the hearing, Robert found Lily in her art corner, working intently on a new drawing. Her face was set in lines of concentration, her small hand moving with precise strokes across the paper. "What are you working on?" he asked, sitting beside her. She showed him the drawing, a detailed courtroom scene rendered with remarkable accuracy for a child her age. The judge sat at her bench, attorneys at their tables, spectators in rows behind them. But what caught Robert's attention was the central figure, Lily herself standing before the bench, her expression solemn but determined. "For tomorrow," she explained. "I want to remember what it looks like before I go in." "Are you nervous?" She nodded, setting down her pencil. "What if I say the wrong thing? What if the judge doesn't believe me?" Just tell the truth, Lily. Your truth as you understand it. That's all anyone can ask." She was quiet for a moment, her fingers tracing the outline of her drawing. "If I have to go with him, will I still see you sometimes?" The question pierced Robert's heart. "That's not going to happen. But even if it did, I would fight to remain part of your life no matter what." Lily leaned against his shoulder. "I wish my mom could be there tomorrow. She would know what to say." "I think she'd be very proud of how brave you've been," Robert said softly. "And I think she'd want you to follow your heart." "My heart wants to stay with you," Lily whispered. "You're my real family now." The morning of the final hearing dawned bright and clear, the late April sun warming the Manhattan streets. Robert and Lily dressed carefully. He, in a conservative suit that David had advised, projected the right image of responsible parenthood, she in a simple blue dress that Eleanor had helped her choose. "You look very grown up," Robert told her as they prepared to leave. "I feel grown up," she replied seriously, "and scared." "That's okay. Being brave doesn't mean not feeling scared. It means doing what you need to do even when you are scared." The courthouse was already surrounded by media when they arrived. David had arranged for them to enter through a side entrance, avoiding the worst of the cameras and reporters. Inside, the courtroom was packed. Attorneys, court personnel, spectators drawn by the high-profile nature of the case. William Harrison sat at the plaintiff's table, immaculately dressed, his expression confident. He nodded slightly to Lily as she entered, but she kept her eyes fixed ahead. Judge Winters called the court to order promptly at 9. "This is the final determination hearing regarding custody of Elizabeth Harrison, also known as Lily Jane Doe. Both parties have submitted extensive documentation, which the court has reviewed. We have also received the special investigator's report, which will be addressed in due course." She fixed both men with a stern gaze. "Before we proceed with arguments, I wish to speak with Lily again. Given the nature of this case and her age, I believe her voice must be central to these proceedings." As before, Lily was led to the judge's chambers, this time accompanied by both the court psychologist and Marcus Chen. The wait was excruciating, stretching to nearly an hour as the adults in the courtroom sat in tense silence. When Lily finally returned, her face was composed but her eyes were red-rimmed, suggesting she had been crying. She walked directly to Robert's side, slipping her small hand into his as she sat. Judge Winters resumed her place, shuffling papers deliberately before addressing the courtroom. "I have spoken at length with Lily, who has shown remarkable clarity and maturity in expressing her feelings and preferences. I have also reviewed Special Investigator Chen's comprehensive report regarding the circumstances surrounding Caroline Harrison's disappearance and Lily's subsequent abandonment." She removed her glasses, her expression grave. This case presents extraordinary challenges. On one hand, we have a biological father seeking to reclaim a child he believed was deceased. On the other, we have a guardian who has provided stability, affection, and security to a child who had previously experienced multiple attachment disruptions. Harrison's attorney rose to speak, but the judge waved him down. I'll hear arguments momentarily, Mr. Fulton, but first, I want to address the findings in Investigator Chen's report. She turned several pages of the document before her. The evidence suggests that Caroline Harrison fled her marriage due to escalating control and potential threats. She took extraordinary measures to protect her daughter, including creating false identities and liquidating assets through complex channels. These are not the actions of someone experiencing mere marital discord. They suggest genuine fear for safety. Harrison shifted uncomfortably in his seat as Judge Winters continued. Most disturbing are the circumstances surrounding Caroline's disappearance after leaving Lily at the service station. The timing coinciding with Mr. Harrison's unscheduled trip to Virginia, the presence of a physician specializing in sedatives, the unexplained cash withdrawals, all create a troubling picture that cannot be ignored in determining Lily's best interests. She fixed Harrison with a penetrating stare. Mr. Harrison, I am referring these matters to the appropriate authorities for further investigation. For the purposes of today's determination, however, I must consider whether placing Lily in your custody would serve her best interests in light of these unresolved questions. Harrison's attorney immediately objected. Your Honor, these allegations are entirely speculative and prejudicial. My client has not been charged with any wrongdoing, let alone convicted. Denying him custody of his biological daughter based on unsubstantiated theories would be a gross miscarriage of justice. I'm well aware of the legal standards involved, Mr. Fulton, Judge Winters replied coolly, which is why I will now hear final arguments from both sides before rendering my decision. The legal arguments that followed were passionate and detailed. Harrison's team emphasized the sanctity of biological connections, the father's right to raise his child, and the lack of concrete evidence linking him to any wrongdoing. They painted Robert as an opportunistic outsider who had concealed Lily's true identity to serve his own emotional needs. David countered with a compelling narrative of abandonment and recovery, how Lily had been left in the system for 3 years while Harrison made no meaningful effort to find her, how she had cycled through 6 foster homes before finding stability with Robert, and how her psychological well-being had finally begun to improve under his care. The timing of Mr. Harrison's sudden interest in reclaiming his daughter, coinciding precisely with a multi-billion-dollar transaction that would be complicated by her reappearance, should give this court serious pause, David argued. This case isn't about biological rights versus adoptive bonds. It's about whether a child should be treated as a person or a possession. Throughout the arguments, Lily sat quietly beside Robert, her hand still firmly in his. When asked if either party wished to make a personal statement before the judge deliberated, Harrison declined. Robert rose, speaking directly to Judge Winters. Your Honor, over the past 6 months, I've watched Lily transform from a withdrawn, distrustful child into someone who can laugh, create, and begin to trust again. Whatever decision you make today will profoundly impact her future. All I ask is that you consider not just what she is, biologically or legally, but who she has become and who she wants to be. Judge Winters nodded thoughtfully. Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. She turned to Lily. Young lady, is there anything you would like to say before I make my decision? Lily looked surprised at being directly addressed. She glanced uncertainly at Robert, who gave her an encouraging nod. Rising from her seat, she approached the bench as instructed, her small figure dwarfed by the imposing courtroom. When she spoke, her voice was clear despite its softness. I know Mr. Harrison is my father by blood, she began, but Robert is my father by choice. His choice to take me in when no one wanted me, and my choice to trust him when I was afraid to trust anyone. She glanced back at Robert briefly before continuing. My mother taught me that family isn't just who you're born to, but who loves you enough to keep you safe. Robert keeps me safe. He helps me with homework and listens when I'm sad and never gets angry when I make mistakes. Lily took a deep breath. I don't remember much about living with Mr. Harrison, but I remember being afraid. I remember my mother being afraid too. I don't want to go back to being afraid. She stood a little straighter. Please let me stay with the person who feels like my real dad now. Not because of blood or names, but because of love. The courtroom was utterly silent as Lily returned to her seat. Even Harrison seemed momentarily shaken by the simple eloquence of her statement. Judge Winters called a brief recess to consider her ruling. Those 30 minutes stretched like an eternity as Robert and Lily waited, hands still joined, for a decision that would shape both their futures. When the judge finally returned, her expression was solemn but resolved. In matters of custody, courts must balance multiple factors: biological ties, psychological attachments, continuity of care, and most importantly, the child's best interests. This case presents unique challenges given the extraordinary circumstances surrounding Lily's separation from her biological family and the serious unresolved questions about that separation. She looked directly at Lily, having spoken with this remarkable young person several times now, and having reviewed all evidence presented by both parties. I find that Lily's best interests are clearly served by remaining in the custody of Robert Mitchell. A murmur ran through the courtroom. Harrison's face darkened with anger as Judge Winters continued. I am granting Mr. Mitchell's petition for permanent adoption, effective immediately. Mr. Harrison's biological connection will be legally recognized, and he may petition for visitation rights after completing a court-mandated psychological evaluation and parenting course. Harrison's attorney immediately rose to object, but Judge Winters raised her hand. My decision is based on multiple factors, Mr. Fulton: the child's stated preference, her demonstrated attachment to Mr. Mitchell, the suspicious circumstances surrounding her mother's disappearance, and the troubling timing of Mr. Harrison's sudden interest in reclaiming her. She gathered her papers. This court is particularly concerned that Mr. Harrison made no meaningful effort to locate his daughter for 3 years, despite having the resources to conduct a worldwide search, if he truly believed there was any possibility she had survived. That neglect, whatever its motivation, cannot be dismissed in determining what serves Lily's best interests now. With a final tap of her gavel, Judge Winters concluded the hearing. This matter is decided. Court is adjourned. For a moment, Robert sat frozen, hardly daring to believe what he had just heard. Then Lily's arms were around his neck, her face pressed against his shoulder. We won, she whispered. We really won. Yes, sweetheart, he replied, his voice thick with emotion. We did. Across the courtroom, William Harrison stood rigidly, conferring with his attorneys. His expression was one of cold fury barely contained beneath a veneer of composure. As Robert and Lily prepared to leave, Harrison approached them, stopping just close enough to speak without being overheard by others. This isn't over, Mitchell, he said quietly. Not by a long shot. I have resources you can't imagine, connections at levels you'll never reach. It is over, Robert replied calmly, at least as far as Lily is concerned. Whatever vendetta you want to pursue against me, leave her out of it. Harrison's gaze shifted to Lily, who stood partially behind Robert, watching her biological father warily. Elizabeth, he said, his tone softening slightly, you're confused now, influenced by this arrangement, but you're a Harrison. That blood runs in your veins. One day you'll understand what that means. Lily stepped forward, standing beside Robert rather than behind him. My name is Lily Mitchell now, she said clearly, and I already understand what matters. Harrison's expression hardened once more. With a curt nod to his attorneys, he turned and strode from the courtroom, leaving a wake of tension behind him. David approached, his face split with a wide grin. Congratulations, both of you. Judge Winters' ruling was more definitive than I dared hope. What happens now? Robert asked, his arm protectively around Lily's shoulders. There will be paperwork, formalities to complete the adoption. Harrison will almost certainly appeal, but given the strength of the ruling and Chen's findings, his chances of success are minimal. David smiled down at Lily. For all practical purposes, you're officially a family now. Outside the courthouse, they navigated past reporters with the help of security personnel. In the car heading home, Lily was uncharacteristically quiet, gazing out the window at the spring sunshine bathing the city. Are you okay? Robert asked gently. It's been an intense day, she nodded slowly. I was thinking about my mom. I wish she could know I'm safe now. Robert felt a lump form in his throat. I think she does know, Lily, and I think she would be very proud of how brave you've been. Do you think Mr. Harrison will still try to take me away? He might try legal maneuvers, appeals, things like that. But Judge Winter's decision was very clear. You're staying with me. Lily seemed to consider this. Will I ever have to see him again? Jason, that will depend partly on what the judge decides about visitation, and partly on what you want when you're a bit older. But for now, any contact would be supervised, and only if it feels safe and right for you. She nodded, apparently satisfied with this answer. Can we go home now? I want to show Eleanor my drawing from court. Absolutely. I think Eleanor might have prepared a special celebration dinner, too. That evening, the penthouse was transformed by Eleanor's efforts, flowers on the tables, Lily's favorite foods prepared with extra care, even a small cake with "Congratulations, Lily Mitchell," written in blue icing. As they shared this impromptu celebration, Robert observed the subtle but significant changes in Lily's demeanor. She laughed more freely, moved through the space with newfound confidence, and spoke without the hesitation that had characterized her early days with him. Later, after Eleanor had gone home and Lily was preparing for bed, she emerged from her bathroom in pajamas, her face freshly washed and hair damp from her shower. "Can I ask you something?" she said, climbing under her covers. "Of course. Is it okay if I call you Dad now, since it's official and everything?" Robert felt his heart expand with an emotion too powerful for words. "I would be honored, Lily, more than you could possibly know." She smiled, settling against her pillows. "Good, because I've been practicing in my head, and it feels right. It feels right to me, too." After reading her usual bedtime story, Robert kissed her forehead and turned out the light, leaving the bathroom door ajar as always, with its nightlight casting a gentle glow. In the hallway he paused, overcome by the journey that had brought them to this moment. From a chance encounter on a Manhattan sidewalk to a hard-won legal victory that had made them, officially and irrevocably, father and daughter. The challenges weren't over, of course. Harrison would likely pursue his vendetta through other channels. The criminal investigation into Caroline's fate would bring its own complications, and Lily would need ongoing support to process her complex past. But for tonight, in this moment of hard-won peace, Robert allowed himself to simply be grateful. For the little girl sleeping safely in her room, for the judge who had listened and understood, for the second chance at family that neither of them had expected to find. In Lily's room on her nightstand sat her most recent drawing, the penthouse again, but transformed from earlier versions. No lonely child watching from outside, no ghostly maternal figure hovering on the margins. Just a simple scene of home. A man and a little girl seated at a table, smiles on their faces, surrounded by the warm glow of belonging. No longer the observer on the outside, Lily had finally placed herself where she had always longed to be, in the center of a family that was hers, in a home where she was not just safe but cherished for exactly who she was.